Hey guys, tonight we're going to do the impossible, relax while tiptoeing through one of the darkest chapters in human history. Picture this, the air smells like wood smoke, damp straw, and maybe something worse. You're waking up on a lumpy mattress stuffed with sheep's wool. Through a crack in the shutter, a gray dawn filters in. Church bells toll in the distance, not the pleasant kind, more like the ominous, hey someone else just died kind. You blink a few times. A flea hops off the blanket. You scratch your ankle. Congratulations, you've just been introduced to your first major problem, so, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in Europe. It's 1347. Your town might have a name like Swinebrook or St. Peter something, but honestly, you're too tired to care. The market smells like spoiled fish and boiled cabbage. The streets are mud if you're lucky, or a slurry of animal dung, chamber pot contents, and something suspiciously pinkish if you're not. Something's off, people have been dying, but when haven't they? Infant mortality is a daily horror, and your neighbor's cousin fell into a well last Tuesday. Death is kind of background noise, but then it gets louder. First, it's the sailors. A few ships dock in Sicily, perfectly ordinary, until you see that most of the crew is dead. Not seasick. Dead. The survivors have black boils under their arms and behind their knees. They vomit blood and expire within 3 days. The locals call it La Pestilence. The Black Death has arrived, and you, lucky you, are right on time. By the time anyone realizes what's going on, it's already everywhere. Rats carry fleas, fleas carry Yersinia pestis, and you carry a false sense of security. Trade routes become veins of transmission. The disease flows from port cities to inland towns, hitching rides on carts, horses, and dirty linen. And of course, on people, sweaty, terrified people, you start hearing about it more. A merchant collapses mid-sail, face dark with bruises. A child turns gray and cold overnight. A priest stops giving last rites because he ran out of breath before he ran out of corpses. Still, you think, maybe it won't come here. Then your neighbor, the one who always brings you rye bread on Sundays, doesn't open her door. You peek inside and find her slumped at the table, face down in a bowl of cold porridge. The baby's crying in the cradle. You walk away. You don't touch anything. That's smart, by the way. One of the few good choices you'll make this month. Here's your first survival tip: be boring. Don't travel. Don't help too much. Definitely don't go investigating that empty cottage just because you thought you heard a noise. People who get curious. People who want to be heroes. They end up as cautionary tales, but even being bored only works for so long. Your town's well starts to smell odd. A few chickens go still. Then, suddenly, everything speeds up. The mayor locks himself inside his home and posts a sign that says prayers only. The baker vanishes. No one has seen the blacksmith since his son started coughing. A messenger rides through on horseback shouting, "Quarantine. Quarantine." But by now, it's like telling a waterfall to take a break. People whisper that it's God's punishment. Or a comet. Or poisoned air, miasma, they call it. Some blame foreigners. Others accuse witches, Jews, or anyone with a slightly different hat. Historians still argue whether the first wave of panic killed more people than the plague itself. Mass hysteria is contagious too. You begin to see them, the plague carts. Once a day, 2 or 3 strongish men walk through the street, shouting, "Bring out your dead." The bodies they collect are dumped in a cart like logs. Sometimes they're still breathing. Sometimes not. The line blurs, You hear screaming one night and find out the tanner's wife locked herself in the shed with her children and set it on fire. Her husband had been coughing. That's it. Just coughing. The local monastery, once a place of calm, turns into a kind of chaotic hospice. The monks do their best, bless them, but even faith has limits. They're short on food, linens, and prayers. Eventually, even the holy water gets used up, and then it's your turn. You wake up one morning with a headache. Your neck feels heavy. You pull your collar down and see something, a dark, swollen bump under your arm. It's hot to the touch and tender. You remember the stories about the buboes. You try to convince yourself it's just a bug bite. Maybe a spider. Maybe you slept funny, then you vomit, you don't eat. You sweat through your blanket. Your fingers start to look blue. Someone knocks on the door, then quickly walks away. You're alone. And for a moment, you wonder if that's a blessing. The thing is, some people survive. About 1 in 4. Not great odds, but not hopeless either. The trick seems to be rest, hydration, and divine luck, or maybe strong genetics. Historians still debate whether certain blood types conferred resistance. You hallucinate. Your dreams feel like falling. You wake up to birds that aren't there. You scream at the wall because you think it's your brother. It's not, then, miraculously, you wake up one morning and you're hungry. Your fever's broken. The swelling is still there, but it's not getting worse. You drink water. You eat stale bread. You cry a little. You made it. Now what? The village is quieter than before. You walk through the square, past shuttered windows and silent houses. The wind rattles the sign of the tavern. You see a dog chewing something in the gutter, and you don't look too closely. You find one of the monks. He's wearing a cloth around his face and digging a shallow grave. He nods at you. That's the whole exchange. You've entered what some called the after, that liminal space between catastrophe and routine. No one knows what to do. Crops aren't planted. Children aren't taught. People either cling to religion with white knuckles or abandon it completely. You find yourself doing both, sometimes on the same day, and here's the odd thing, the world keeps spinning. The seasons change. Trees bud. The air softens. A neighbor starts baking again. Someone opens a stall selling salt. A girl you thought was dead is singing by the river, and you begin, slowly, to live again, but the fear never leaves you. It settles into your bones, like the chill of an unheated chapel. You flinch when someone sneezes. You avoid crowds. You count your family members every morning. You hear rumors of other towns where 90% of the population died. Whole villages vanished. Some survivors walk for days, looking for people. Looking for proof the world didn't end, and yet, some good things trickle in. Labor becomes more valuable, there are fewer of you, after all. Wages rise. The lords, once smug and untouchable, now court peasants with promises of land and lower taxes. You stand a little taller, and the survivors? They're different. Hardened. Wiser, maybe. A little broken. But fiercely alive. You never forget that spring. The one where every blossom felt like defiance. The one where you touched the bark of a tree and wept because it was still standing, and you, somehow, are still standing too. You walk past the old church one day and notice something scrawled into the stone with a nail or a bit of iron, just a few jagged words, Nos Comenimus. We who remain. You trace the letters with your fingertip. There's something heavy about them. Not grief exactly. More like endurance. The town's changed. You're not sure if you like it. There are fewer voices in the morning. Fewer footsteps on cobblestones. But the silence isn't hollow anymore. It's deeper, Like the hush of a forest after a storm, scarred, yes, but alive, you take on new work. Maybe your cousin's gone, and the mill needs someone. Maybe the apothecary's desperate for help even if you can't tell the difference between lavender and lichen. You learn. You fumble through it. Everyone does. A child hands you a bundle of sticks one day and says, "For the dead ones." You don't ask questions. You help him build a tiny pyre by the river. He hums while he stacks the wood. You hum too, even if you don't know the tune. The wind picks up. The fire crackles. You don't cry. Later that week, someone throws a feast. It's not lavish, some roasted root vegetables, a round of bread, a bit of wine thinned with water, but people laugh. Someone plays a fiddle with only 3 strings. A woman dances barefoot, even though the ground's still cold. You find yourself smiling. Actually smiling. And for a moment, you remember what it's like to live without clutching every breath in your throat. Here's something strange: people start getting married again. Babies are born. Fields are sown with new crops. The world, impossibly, begins to heal itself. Not quickly. Not fully. But enough that you start to make plans again. Not big ones, just tomorrow's bread, maybe a walk in the hills, or repair to the thatched roof. You speak with a neighbor you used to avoid. You exchange small kindnesses, like eggs or firewood or just a few words that don't revolve around death. You even start to write things down, little notes on scraps of parchment. Lists. Names. Thoughts. A kind of diary. You hide it in a crack between stones. Not because it's secret. Just because. Well, what if someone finds it later? What if someone like you finds it, years or centuries from now, wondering how anyone survived this, and the truth is, you don't know how. Not exactly, you just did. You're not the same. You never will be. But you're still here. Breathing. Blinking. Walking the same earth that's held generations of pain and joy. And now holds you, too. You're sweating. Again. You've got chills, your head is pounding, and someone just whispered the word buboes in connection with your name. Things are not going well, naturally. Someone suggested a doctor. Well. Doctor. You wait on a rickety stool while your neighbor's cousin, who once shadowed a barber surgeon for a week, comes in holding a leather satchel and a look of deep concern. He nods gravely, as if the 4 boils on your neck are particularly elegant specimens. Then, with the calm precision of someone who doesn't fully understand what he's doing but wants to look confident, he pulls out a brass bowl and a leech the size of your thumb. You flinch. He does not. This is it. The height of 14th century medical science, bloodletting. It's based on the idea that your body has 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, and that all disease comes from an imbalance of those. So clearly, you've got too much blood. Or too little bile. Or not enough phlegm. The truth is, no one agrees. Even the monks argue about it when they're not too busy praying over graves. Historians still argue whether humoral theory did more harm than good over the centuries. But for now, you don't get to argue. You're just the patient, the leech attaches with a wet smack. You try not to gag. It pulses slowly as it feeds, and the doctor looks pleased. You, less so. After half an hour, you're lightheaded and deeply unimpressed. He packs the wound with moss, nods solemnly again, and tells you to rest. He mentions he'll return tomorrow to cut your arm open and let some more bad air out. You wonder if you'll survive the cure. Medicine, in this era, is equal parts guesswork, superstition, and pure performance art. You're offered wine boiled with rosemary. Someone suggests binding a live pigeon to your chest. Another person swears by powdered emeralds in warm ale. It works better if the emerald was once stolen, she adds helpfully. none of this makes you feel better. At the monastery, the sick are lined up in rows. Some get prayers whispered over them. Others get onions cut and placed around their necks. You pass a man covered in what looks like goose fat and crushed garlic, glistening like a medieval roast. The monk tending to him assures you, garlic purifies. You nod slowly. You also note that the man isn't moving. Another monk tells you about the doctrine of signatures, the idea that God left clues in nature about which plants cure what. Walnuts, for instance, are shaped like brains, so they must help headaches. Liverwort resembles a liver, so obviously it's good for jaundice. You look down at your own boils and wonder what horrifying plant they resemble. You try herbal infusions, nettle, sage, mugwort. You drink a dark tea so bitter you're convinced it has to be doing something. You even try a mixture involving dried lizard skin and a hint of powdered bone. Spoiler, it doesn't help, but your burps smell like the inside of a dungeon now. A traveling healer visits the village. She wears a necklace of snail shells and speaks to her herbs before using them. She rubs a paste of crushed mint and dirt into your temples and tells you that the earth remembers your health. You don't know what that means, but you nod because she looks like she might curse you if you don't. She also burns rosemary and lavender in a pan and tells you to inhale deeply. You do. It's not unpleasant. For a moment, you feel calm. And that's something. Honestly, in a world where leeches and bird chests are considered medical staples, aromatherapy might be one of the more reasonable approaches. Then there's the barber surgeon, yes, the same guy who cuts hair, pulls teeth, and once helped remove a boy's extra toe. He offers to lance your buboes with a heated knife. He does not wear gloves. He does not sterilize the blade. He sharpens it on his belt while telling a long story about how one of his cousins coughed out a demon once. You lie back and let it happen. You scream a little. That's okay. He seems used to it. Afterward, he pours wine on the wound and ties it off with something that might have once been part of a curtain. You feel dizzy. You're not sure whether it's from blood loss or sheer existential dread. Here's something grim. Medicine is often deadlier than the disease. Between dirty instruments, wild guesses, and a complete lack of understanding about germs, a well-meaning treatment could easily accelerate your journey to the afterlife. But people keep trying. Not because they know it'll work, but because not trying feels worse. There's a story about a man in Marseille who bathed in vinegar every day during the plague and survived. So you try it. It stings your skin and makes your eyes water. You convince yourself it's working. This is known as desperation logic. Another rumor claims that burning sulfur under your bed will chase away the bad air. You try that too. It nearly suffocates you, but you don't get worse, so. Success. Let's talk about urine. It's everywhere. People drink it, wash with it, even sniff it as a way to purify the sinuses. You find a recipe for a tonic involving stale urine, honey, and ground pepper. You stare at it. You put it down. Not today. One friend gives you a charm, an amulet with dried toad's tongue and some Latin scribbles. You wear it because honestly, what's one more weird thing around your neck? It clinks gently when you walk, and for some reason, that tiny sound comforts you. Still, nothing truly works. The sickness comes and goes as it pleases. Sometimes people recover for no clear reason. Other times, someone who looked fine in the morning is dead by dinner. A local noblewoman quarantines herself in her estate with 10 servants and barrels of wine. She dies anyway. Halfway through a peach, people start looking at healers with a mix of awe and suspicion. If they can't save the sick, maybe they're cursed. If they can, maybe they made a deal with the devil. It's a lose-lose situation. Historians still argue whether the plague doctors of the era, those robed figures with bird masks, did any good at all. Some say they helped organize responses. Others say they were mostly for show. You haven't seen one yet. But if you do, you'll know him by the smell, herbs stuffed in the beak to ward off bad air, and a waxed cloak that squeaks when he walks. At some point, you stop expecting to be healed, instead, you start hoping for relief. A day without fever. A night with a little sleep. A morning where your legs feel strong enough to fetch water. These become your benchmarks. Not cure, just comfort, and once you shift your mindset, something strange happens. You relax a little. You laugh, even. Someone makes a joke about using leeches as soup garnish. Someone else creates a song about the local midwife's terrifying potions. You begin to see medicine not just as a set of tools, but as a kind of storytelling. A way to say, I want to survive. Even if the tools are silly. Even if the results are mixed. It's the trying that matters. You sit one evening by the fire with a cloth soaked in lavender vinegar on your forehead, drinking weak beer because the water's probably worse. Your friend reads aloud from a list of cures someone nailed to the church door. It includes burying a live chicken near the boil and eating rose petals soaked in blood. You both agree to pass on those, and in the candlelight, surrounded by absurdity and sweat and a dozen possible infections, you start to believe you might make it through. You wake up to the sound of someone outside shouting about frogs. That's never a great sign. You roll off your lumpy bed, feet touching the dirt floor, and squint through the warped shutters. There he is, old Tomas, the town's unofficial wise man, holding a frog above his head like he's discovered the philosopher's stone. They pull the sickness out. He yells, waving it triumphantly. No one argues. Frankly, no one has the energy to. Soon, the town is crawling with people catching frogs. You're handed one. It blinks at you. You blink back. This is your life now. You're told to tie it to your leg and wait. Supposedly, it will absorb the plague and then die, having sacrificed itself for your health. It sounds absurd, but then again, so did rubbing garlic on your toes, and your cousin swears by that. And really, in a world where prayers and leeches have failed you, what's one more amphibian-based solution? You do as instructed. The frog does not die. It does pee on your foot, though. That feels symbolic somehow. Other folk cures flood in. Your neighbor insists on onion poultices. She slices a dozen raw onions and lays them around her house like garlic against vampires. Then she presses a warm slice to your wrist and mutters, they suck the poison out. You nod politely, but honestly, you're just grateful it's not more leeches. Another trend. Roasted apples stuffed with cloves. Someone says it helps draw out the blackness. You eat one. It's actually kind of nice. Not medicinal in any measurable sense, but it feels cozy, and that's rare. You eat 3 more. You regret nothing. People try smoke treatments, too. One man sets up a brazier in his house and burns bundles of dried herbs, believing the smoke will chase out the evil. You visit. His house smells like a haunted bakery. You cough for 20 minutes but agree that your sinuses feel very, very clear. Then there's urine. Again, this time, it's not for drinking. Thankfully. This version involves soaking bandages in aged water of self and tying them around your head or armpits. You politely decline. The girl next door swears it cleared her fever. You're not sure whether to congratulate her or move further away. You also hear about bloodstones, red or green gems believed to draw out illness. You see a man tie one around his neck with a piece of twine and sit cross-legged in the square, humming. He looks peaceful. Later, someone steals the stone. The man blames his relapse on the break in the aura. You nod, because again, this is your life now. Historians still argue whether some of these cures were actually useful in side-effect ways. Maybe onions absorbed bacteria. Or vinegar killed surface germs, but let's be real, no one at the time had microscopes. They were shooting in the dark with frogs and prayers, and there's this one, powdered mummy. Yes, really, you meet a traveling merchant who sells tiny glass vials filled with dark dust. He claims it's the ground remains of ancient Egyptian kings and queens. Supposedly, consuming it, just a pinch in wine, restores vitality. You ask him why royal corpses would help. He shrugs. They lived long enough to get mummified, didn't they? You do not buy any. But someone else does, and suddenly everyone wants powdered mummy. The supply dries up quickly. Then someone makes fake versions with dried liver. No one can tell the difference. You also hear about a cure that involves whispering your symptoms to a mouse, then setting the mouse free. It carries the illness away, they say. You try it. The mouse looks at you with tiny blank eyes, twitches its nose, and runs into a wall. You feel oddly better. That's the thing, belief itself becomes medicine. When everything around you is collapsing, even a foolish ritual gives structure. You start performing small routines each morning: touch the doorframe twice, tie your belt the same way, check the sky for birds. It doesn't matter if it helps. It feels like you're doing something. Some people lean harder into faith. Crosses appear above doorways. Small altars pop up in homes, candles, relics, carved images of saints. One family swears that Saint Rock saved their grandmother. They light incense and keep a chicken next to the shrine. You don't know why the chicken's there. They say it's symbolic. You decide not to question it. One night, a stranger arrives, an old woman with strange tattoos and eyes that never seem to blink. She offers to read your future in a bowl of water. You say yes. She stares into the bowl for a long time, then tells you, you'll live. But you won't enjoy it. Then she asks for food. You give her bread and don't ask what she means. Sometimes you think the cures aren't really for the body at all. They're for your mind. A defense against hopelessness. It's easier to pin your survival on frogs and onions than admit you're spinning a wheel of chance with each breath. There's a boy in the village who keeps a bag of marbles. Every time someone survives, he puts a marble in the luck pouch. He says it balances the bad ones. He tells you the marbles whisper to him at night. You're disturbed. You're also mildly jealous. You make your own charm. A bit of twine, a smooth pebble, and a scrap of fabric from your mother's old dress. You carry it in your pocket. It means nothing to anyone else. To you, it means, you're still here. One day, the frogs stop dying. People start questioning the method. Someone tries beetles. Someone else suggests snails. Then someone catches a fox and ties it to his waist like a furry belt of health. That doesn't go well. The fox bites him and flees. The man gets a fever the next day. No one mentions it again. You begin to see how folk cures move like fashion trends. One week it's red stones, the next it's parsley baths. A woman swears by sleeping upside down. Another says you must hum while boiling cabbage. Every house has its own ritual. Every family has its own superstition. You try almost all of them. Some work, some do nothing, one gives you a rash. You keep trying anyway, because maybe, just maybe, it's not about surviving perfectly. It's about staying in motion. Even if the motion is weird, even if it smells like frog breath and onions, you lie in bed one night with a beetle paste on your chest and a sprig of rosemary under your pillow. The wind rattles the shutters. Somewhere in the distance, someone coughs. A dog barks. Then silence. You think about all the people who didn't make it. The ones who didn't try the cures. The ones who did. The ones who danced in fields or bathed in vinegar or hung fish skeletons above their doors. You wonder if survival is mostly just stubbornness, and you decide to be stubborn. Tomorrow you'll try a new tea made from dried dandelion and boiled apple peels. You'll wear a charm shaped like a sheep. You'll mutter a few protective rhymes under your breath when you walk past the old burial hill. It's ridiculous. It's irrational. It's human, and sometimes, somehow, it's enough. You fall asleep that night with a wax-stiffened cloth tied around your forehead, soaked in sage and vinegar. It smells like a salad, but stronger. You've grown used to it. In your dreams, frogs talk. They wear little hats and argue about which of them is most effective. One of them bows and croaks. You are cured, noble sufferer. Before leaping into a glowing onion, you wake up groggy, vaguely amused, and, oddly, less achy. Is it real? Probably not. But your cough is quieter. Your throat's less raw. You sit up and stretch, and for the first time in days, you don't feel like you're wrapped in lead. Maybe it's the herbs. Maybe it's just time. Maybe your body finally decided not to give up. You light a sprig of thyme and wave it around the room just in case. Down the road, you hear someone clanging a spoon against a pot, announcing a new cure: boiled pine cones and honey. It draws out the heat. The woman insists. You smile. Not because you believe her, but because she believes something. And that, somehow, makes you feel better. You tuck your homemade charm back into your tunic. The little pebble presses against your ribs as you stand. It's not science. It's not medicine. But it's enough to carry you into another day, and sometimes, in times like these, another day is a miracle. You wake up to church bells. Not the funeral tolls, those have become background noise, but a sharp, quick peal. A call to gather. That's unusual. You step outside wrapped in your patched cloak, breath fogging in the morning chill. Others emerge too, thin, pale, wary. It feels like a ghost village remembering it still has bones. In the square, the town crier stands on a crate, flanked by two men wearing long black cloaks and gloves. They're masks. Well, there's something else: beaked, long-nosed, leather, glass-eyed. Like predatory birds caught halfway through a masquerade, the plague doctors have arrived. You've heard of them, of course. Whispers passed between dying neighbors. Grim figures in bird masks, carrying sticks to poke the sick from a safe distance. Some say they're healers. Others say they're harbingers. Either way, they carry something rarer than medicine: authority. One of them reads from a scroll, voice muffled behind the mask. Something about pestilence, order, and cooperation. Then they begin their rounds, examining households, scribbling notes, muttering behind beaks filled with camphor and mint. You watch them walk door to door, pausing outside some, entering others. When they reach yours, one lifts a gloved hand and knocks. You let them in. Inside, the air is stale with old smoke and onion paste. You suddenly feel embarrassed by the toad charm hanging by the window. One doctor squats beside your mattress, observing the fading swellings on your neck. He doesn't speak, but the other one says, "You're improving." It almost sounds like a question. They leave behind a sachet of herbs and instructions: boil them, inhale the steam, burn the residue. You nod solemnly and try not to sneeze until they're gone. Outside, the villagers whisper. Someone claims the bird masks scare away evil spirits. Another says the long beaks are to keep the stench out. Both are true. Sort of. Historians still argue whether plague doctors were actually useful or just symbolic placeholders, figures of false comfort dressed up in drama. Most weren't trained physicians. Some were just hired notaries recording deaths. But the robes, the beaks, the aura of control, they made people feel like someone was in charge. Even if they weren't, you start noticing that people behave differently around the plague doctors. They speak more quietly. Walk straighter. Light candles again. Hope is a strange thing. It doesn't need facts. Just the suggestion that someone knows what they're doing. You hear stories from other towns, how some doctors drained boils with silver needles, or offered pepper lozenges. Or kept journals of symptoms so detailed they read like horror poetry. You wonder if they'll write about you. Survived, despite modest hygiene and fondness for frogs. You try to follow their advice: boil herbs. Clean wounds with wine. Sleep facing north. Wear a mask of cloth soaked in vinegar when going out. It smells like pickled sadness, but you do it. The plague doctors set up a station in the chapel, repurposing pews into examination tables. People shuffle in, confess their symptoms, and shuffle out. Some are given little pouches of dried flowers. Others get marked with chalk, symbols for tracking, for warning, for study. You get marked, too. A small circle on your door. Faint enough to miss. Obvious enough if you're looking. It bothers you more than you expect. Still, you keep showing up. You ask questions. You try to help a little, sweeping floors, handing out boiled water, holding down someone's arm while a boil is lanced. It's disgusting. It's important. One of the doctors starts nodding at you when you pass. The other might smile. It's hard to tell through the beak. Then you get offered a task, not a big one. Just gathering lavender and mint from the monastery garden. But it's something. You accept. You find the herbs brittle from cold but still fragrant. The monks nod as you pass. One hands you a cracked vial of oil and says, "For the nerves." You thank him and wonder if it's for applying or drinking. You try both. Neither kills you. The work becomes routine. Each morning, you report to the chapel. The doctors give instructions. You carry water, grind dried blossoms, and mix powders. You even help build a fumigation pit, just a fire pit with wet wood and strong-smelling leaves, but the idea is that standing over it clears your lungs. You gag the first few times. Eventually you get used to the sting. One night, you sit outside the chapel with one of the doctors. He's removed the mask to eat, just a quick bite of salted fish and oat bread. His face is younger than you expected. Tired, too. You were sick, he says, gesturing at your neck. You nod. You recovered. Another nod. He doesn't ask how. No one does anymore. Survival is considered private, like prayer or digestion. Instead, he says, you have a steady hand. You look down. You're holding a knife you just used to scrape mold off a poultice. Steady. Ha. You hadn't noticed. I could train you, he says after a pause. Then adds, if you want. You say yes. Not because you think you'll be good at it. Not because you want to wear a bird mask. But because helping people, even awkwardly, even with failure, feels better than waiting, so, you become a kind of apprentice. Not official. Not fancy. But you get to carry the satchel. You're taught how to check for warmth behind the ears, how to smell someone's breath for signs of internal decay, how to pack herbs behind the tongue without choking the patient. You learn fast. You also learn the worst part: it doesn't always matter. You do everything right: clean tools, administer mixtures, speak calmly and still lose them. You press a cloth to a boy's brow for hours, and he smiles once before falling silent. You help a girl recover, only for her father to collapse the next day. Death is greedy. It takes whoever's closest. You try not to let it crush you. Instead, you collect small victories. A fever has broken. A boil drained clean. A patient who sleeps through the night. You keep a list. Just names. People who lived. It becomes a kind of scripture. You read it before bed, like a prayer in reverse. You're given gloves. Real gloves. They don't fit quite right, and they smell like vinegar and wax, but they're yours. A symbol. Proof that someone thinks you're useful, and that changes how people see you. Neighbors who once avoided you now nod in greeting. A child tugs at your tunic and says, "You're with the birds." You smile. You don't correct him, you feel not important, exactly. But present. Needed, and that's new, the town is quieter now. Not from death though, that's still happening, but from discipline. People are cleaner. They speak in hushed tones. They burn incense not for luxury, but out of habit. The plague doctors begin writing more. Not just records, but letters, observations, questions. You help gather these papers. One day, you peek at a page, it says, "We do not understand. But we will try," you whisper it to yourself as you walk home. That night, you sewed your own mask. Not a beak, just a cloth wrap with mint leaves tucked in. It smells sharp and green. It makes you feel safe. You dream of feathers. Of standing in a field of tall grass, wearing black, surrounded by crows. They bow to you. You wake up feeling strong. The next morning, the doctor hands you a real mask. It's older, cracked, and slightly too large, but he says, "You've earned this." You wear it, and for the first time in months, no one looks at you like prey. They look at you like a question. And sometimes like an answer. You walk with the plague cart now, not every day. Some days you're boiling clothes or grinding dried bark into coarse dust that may or may not help, but more often than not, you find yourself trudging behind a mule, pulling a cart lined with stained blankets and the unbearable weight of the newly still. The first time, you vomit behind a well. The second time, you don't. They hand you a mask, not the full beak like the plague doctors. Just a cloth soaked in herbs and tied around your face. It smells of vinegar and old mint. You breathe through it carefully, slowly. The smell helps. A little. You pass doorways marked with chalk or crosses smeared in ash. You knock once. If no answer comes, you enter. Gloves on. Breath held. Eyes scanning. Sometimes they're lying in bed, peaceful, like they simply fell asleep mid-prayer. Sometimes they're curled in corners, mouths open, faces frozen in something that once resembled fear and now resembles nothing at all. And sometimes, worse, they're not alone. A child still clutches their hand. A sibling watches from the next room, wide-eyed, not crying. Not yet. You don't speak unless you have to. Instead, you work, you lift. You wrap. You murmur apologies to no one. Then you walk the cart out of the alley and into the sun, where the world pretends to go on. There's a pit on the edge of town. Once it was just a ditch beside a field. Maybe it held rainwater or sheep. Now it holds something else. Rows of the fallen, stacked and wrapped, doused in quicklime. A handful of monks say prayers over each batch, though they've stopped using names. There are too many names now. Names feel too sharp. Too much like living things. The pit stinks. Of course it does. But it's not the stench that unsettles you. It's the silence around it. People avoid it like it's a wound that might scream if you press too close. You don't avoid it. You approach it. You work there. You and 3 others, 2 men, 1 older woman who never says much, become the quiet stewards of the pit. Someone keeps track of numbers. Someone burns herbs to keep flies at bay. Someone says a few words every time, even if it's just "go easy." The older woman hums. Always the same tune. You don't ask what it is. You're afraid if you know, it might lose its magic. You think a lot, standing over that pit. You think about how the world narrowed. How a field that once grew barley now grows grief. How a town's memory collects in layers beneath dirt and stone. You try not to look at faces, but sometimes you do. And sometimes you recognize one, a man who fixed your roof. A girl who once stole an apple and grinned when you caught her. A midwife who sang while she worked, even during storms. A boy who carved animals from bone. You place them gently. It doesn't get easier. You just get better at not crumbling. The pit grows, the town shrinks, you wonder what will happen when they meet in the middle. One day, while stacking bodies, you pause. A shape, wrong. A movement, impossible, a hand twitching, you freeze, then the boy's eyes flutter open, you shout. The others run. You lift him, barely more than bones wrapped in skin, and lay him down beside the pit, in the grass. His breath is ragged. Shallow. But real, he's warm. Later, the doctors say it was a coma. Or a fever dream state. A mistake. But you remember the weight of him in your arms. How close he came to being one more nameless figure in the earth. From then on, you check twice. Always. Just in case, that's when people start calling it the watch pit. Not officially, just in whispers. Let the boy go to the watch pit, they say. They'll know. You build a small shelter near it. Just a lean-to, really. Somewhere to rest between rounds. You furnish it with a stool, a chipped cup, and a scrap of cloth for a pillow. It becomes more than shelter. It becomes ritual. You light a candle at dusk. You leave bread out for the foxes. You start writing things down. At first, it's just numbers. Then initials. Then tiny notes. Girl in yellow ribbon, smiled at me. Old man with curled hands, smelled of soap. You write them because no one else will. One day, a priest visits the pit. He looks uncomfortable. Like the earth might swallow him if he stays too long. He gives a blessing that doesn't quite reach his lips. Then he walks away, quickly, muttering about distance and God's will. You stay behind, because someone has to. There's a kind of holiness in this place. Not in the sacred sense. In the human one, you notice things, the way bodies fall when they've died with others nearby, curled in groups. Fingers barely touching, the way some are still holding objects. A doll. A cross. A spoon, the way the sky always feels too wide when you walk away, and sometimes, just sometimes, you see life, even here, a cluster of wildflowers growing by the rim, a robin hopping near a discarded shoe, a fox cub peeking from the hedgerow. You start talking to them. The flowers. The birds. The foxes. You don't expect answers. But you talk anyway. One night, you wake in the lean-to and think you hear singing. Soft. Far off. A lullaby. You walk to the edge of the pit and listen. The wind blows gently. You don't hear it again, but you leave bread for whoever it was. One afternoon, a child brings you a ribbon. It's red, frayed, stained with something old. For the ones in the pit, she says. So they know we didn't forget. You tie it to the branch of a nearby tree, then others follow, scraps of cloth. Strings of beads. Bits of metal shaped into stars or hearts or nothing at all. It becomes a kind of altar. No one planned it. No one guards it. But it grows. You name the tree, just in your head, you call it marker. It doesn't change anything. But it makes the place feel less like an end, and more like a pause. A strange sort of peace settles there. People who survive start visiting the pit. Quietly. Not for long. They sit by marker. They leave things. They say nothing. Then they go. You recognize the look in their eyes. It's not grief. Not quite. It's the shape of having come through. You don't stop working. You don't stop watching. But you carry less weight now, because you've seen what happens when memory and mercy coexist. You walk the edge of the pit. You whisper names. You pour water on the dry earth. You keep counting, and one day, you realize something. There's space left. Not because fewer die. But because more live. The curve begins to change. The pit slows, and on the day no bodies arrive, you sit beside it with your chipped cup and cry, not because you're sad, but because you can finally stop writing for a while, because the field is quiet, and the silence doesn't hurt anymore. The next morning, you go to the pit out of habit, not necessity. You carry the satchel anyway, just in case. You still boil the herbs. You still wear the mask. But the cart stays empty. The ground near marker feels softer than usual, almost springy. Dew clings to your boots. You sit on the stool and listen. No moaning wind. No coughing in the distance. No soft thump of cloth-wrapped limbs landing in the dirt. Just birdsong. You forgot how strange birds sound. Not strange bad. Strange familiar. Like hearing your own voice after a long time without speaking. They chirp and chatter and rustle the tree like it's an ordinary morning. It feels almost rude to interrupt them, so you don't. Instead, you tie a new piece of cloth to the tree. Blue this time. A bit of old tunic that's faded to the color of cold sky. You say nothing as you do it. Just let your fingers knot the fabric and leave it there. The wind flutters it gently. Like it knows. You light a small fire at the base of the hill. Not for cleansing. Not for fumigation. Just for warmth. You roast a piece of stale bread, sip weak broth from a dented cup, and watch the sun shift slowly over the rim of the earth. Someone approaches. You hear the footsteps first. Cautious. Hesitant. It's a woman. Mid-30s, maybe. You've seen her before. She used to keep bees before the sickness took her husband. She's holding a jar of honey in both hands, wrapped in linen like an offering. Without speaking, she places it at the base of marker. Bows her head. Walks away. You don't stop her. You just nod. Then a boy arrives. He places a wooden toy, one arm missing, but clearly loved, next to the honey. Then a man with a cracked comb. Then a young girl with a folded piece of paper. A drawing? A prayer? You don't ask, it continues. The pit has become something else, not a grave, not exactly a shrine, more like a promise. That someone stayed. That someone looked. That someone still remembers. You stay until dusk. The sun sets behind the tree and silhouettes the ribbons, the cloth, the things left behind. They wave gently in the breeze, not mournful, just present, the kind of quiet that says, this happened, and we're still here. When you leave, you turn back one more time, just once, just long enough to whisper, I saw you. And then you walk home, lighter. You don't get to choose when you're quarantined. You just wake up one day, go to fetch water, and find a rope stretched across the path, tied to a tree on one end and your neighbor's cart on the other. A bundle of herbs dangles in the center, swaying lazily. Someone has written a word on the ground in ash. You know what it means. It means you're not going anywhere for a while. The rope isn't the only sign. People start giving you wide berths. Food is left at the edge of your plot, never handed to you directly. A friend shouts greetings from the road instead of walking up to your door. And at night, when you light your little lamp and place it in the window, no one lights theirs in return. The message is clear, you are to stay put. Welcome to medieval quarantine. There's no central system for this. No official notice. No coordination. Just the ancient rhythm of fear and improvisation. Villages take it upon themselves to invent rules. Some string ropes. Some build fences. Others pile rocks or paint excess on doorposts. It's crude. It's inconsistent. It's wildly unfair. It also works. Sort of. Historians still argue whether medieval quarantine slowed the plague at all. In places like Ragusa, modern Dubrovnik, they tried a formal 40-day isolation period for ships, quaranta giorni, hence the word quarantine. But in little towns like yours, it's more like don't come near me. Or I'll throw a rock. You're not even sick. Not yet. But someone 3 doors down developed a fever. And that's close enough, so, your house becomes your world, the walls feel tighter. The ceiling lower. Every creak sounds suspicious. You wipe down the door latch with vinegar twice a day, even though you're not sure it does anything. You start talking to your chair. You name it Gertrude. Gertrude is a very good listener, your supplies are low. You ration carefully. 1 loaf of bread becomes 4 days' worth of crusts. A handful of dried peas becomes soup if you boil it long enough and convince yourself it's fancy. You discover that nettles are edible if you don't mind your tongue going slightly numb. You miss apples. You miss warm bread. You miss people, well, some people. Not the man who coughs into his sleeve and insists it's just the weather. Or the baker who still licks his fingers while kneading dough. But you miss the woman who hums while fetching water. You miss the boy who always drops things. You miss noise. Silence is the worst part. You start inventing sounds. Imagining footsteps. Whispering words to fill the space. You write lists. Not of important things. Just things you remember, goat names, types of clouds, herbs that smell like home. You hang herbs in the window, because someone said it keeps sickness away. You don't care if it's true. It gives your hands something to do. You braid garlic into ropes and line them along the door. You arrange your few trinkets, beads, carved buttons, pebbles, in circles. A kind of defense, you keep a spoon by your bed. Just in case. Why a spoon? You don't know. It just feels like a weapon against the void. Then, one morning, the rope is gone, no one tells you. It just isn't there. The herbs have fallen to the dirt. The cart has moved. And the word in ash has been washed away by rain. Does this mean you're free? Sort of. People still glance sideways at you. Still pause before speaking. But you step into the road and no one hisses. That's progress. You walk to the square. You buy eggs. You hold them like treasure, but quarantine taught you something. It left a shadow. You find yourself backing away when others get close. You flinch at coughs. You hesitate before touching things. You talk to Gertrude at night, even though you don't need to. Because quarantine wasn't just isolation. It was a transformation. You see who you are when no one is looking. You saw how quiet can unspool your thoughts into strange shapes, and you're not alone in that. You start hearing stories. A man who slept in his barn for 2 weeks to avoid infecting his family. A girl who refused to speak during her isolation, afraid words might carry illness. A priest who built a ladder so he could climb to his bell tower and ring it from afar. Everyone copes differently. Some scream. Some pray. Some paint symbols on the ground or talk to birds. One woman in the next village began writing her dreams on scraps of bark and throwing them into the river. She said the current could carry her nightmares away. You understand. You meet a man who never leaves his house now. Not because he's sick. But because he says he liked the stillness. It's quieter in my head, he tells you. I didn't know that was possible. Another woman wears gloves made of rags and refuses to touch anything directly. Even fruit. Even paper. I touch nothing, I catch nothing, she chants, like a lullaby made of paranoia. You help when you can. You deliver food to homes marked for isolation. You leave it on steps and knock 3 times. You never wait for thanks. You're not doing it for that, you're doing it because you remember what it felt like, the rope. The herbs, the waiting. One house refuses deliveries. No one sees anyone go in or out. You worry. You wait. On the 6th day, you hear sobbing inside. You knock. You leave extra bread. A week later, the door opens. A boy stands there, blinking in the light. She's gone, he says simply. You nod. You say nothing. You hand him soup. Eventually, your town starts keeping lists. Who's been sick? Who hasn't? Who's been quarantined? Who still needs to be? They use symbols. X for active cases. Circle for cleared. Dash for uncertain. You help mark the houses. People don't like it. They say it feels like branding. They're not wrong, but the marks help track things. Keep order. Reduce panic, sort of. You see people smudge the symbols. Redraw them. Erase and reapply them depending on who's watching. A woman paints flowers over hers. Another draws a bird. Some just stop answering their doors. Fear is its own kind of infection. You hold a meeting in the square. Not official. Just a conversation. People speak, argue, cry. One man throws a shoe. You don't know why. But after that, people settle down. They agree on guidelines. Bread shared but not handed. Water drawn in shifts. One person per household is allowed to walk the main road each morning. And a new rule, a blue cloth tied to the doorpost means someone needs help. It's not perfect. But it's something. You start seeing blue clothes everywhere, not always for sickness. Sometimes just for loneliness. For food. For comfort, people respond. Quietly. Carefully, the rope returns, but in new ways. Tied to baskets lowered from windows. Strung between stalls in the market to measure distance. Used to guide the blind without contact. It's no longer a wall. It's a thread, connection. Quarantine, it turns out, can teach the community. By the third month, no new cases appear, the marks fade. The herbs fall away, the ropes vanish again, but this time, it feels like a ceremony. You stand in the square with others. Some cry. Some just breathe. Deep and long, like they're remembering how. The air smells like time. Someone sings. Someone else joins in. It's not a song you know, but it's sweet and low, and the words don't matter. It's the sound. The shared sound. You close your eyes, and you feel, not healed. Not yet, but open, like a door unlatched, like sunlight after a long shadow, like maybe, just maybe, you're ready to live again. That night, no one locks their door. It's not carelessness. It's something closer to trust. Or maybe it's defiance. After months of suspicion, of flinching and side eyes and marking doorposts like they were tombs in waiting, people choose to crack their windows and let in the night. You do, too. For the first time in what feels like forever, the breeze in your room doesn't carry dread. Just the smell of drying earth and faint wood smoke. You lie on your cot and listen. Somewhere, someone's playing a pipe. The tune is clumsy, amateur. You love it. You don't talk to Gertrude that evening. You don't need to. Instead, you light a candle, not for protection, not for prayer, but simply to have a little light. A warm flicker in the dark. You place it on the windowsill, and one by one, others do too. Tiny fires winking into the night like stars remembering their names. Someone laughs down the street. Someone else calls out, "Did you survive?" And another voice, unfamiliar, hoarse, replies, "Yes." But barely. Laughter again. It spreads, not wildly. Not uncontrollably. But it bubbles up in corners and alleyways and courtyards. Not because anything is funny. But because relief sometimes looks like absurd joy. Because laughter, like illness, is contagious. You fall asleep to it, and when you dream, you're walking through a marketplace. People are close. Faces uncovered. You share a fig with a stranger and no one gasps. A child sneezes, and it means nothing. And in the dream, you think, this is how it used to be. And maybe, just maybe, how it could be again. You wake smiling, and outside, dawn is breaking over a town that has not been made whole, but has been made human again. You've heard rumors for weeks now, Not just about survival or quarantine or the latest cure involving snails boiled in ale, but of places that somehow avoided the worst altogether. Towns where the gates were sealed early. Villages where no one came in, no one went out, and miraculously, no one died. It sounds impossible. Which, in this world, means it might be true, and one day, as you're sorting dried rose hips into jars, a visitor arrives. Not just any traveler. This one wears fine boots and a travel-stained coat with a seal stitched into the shoulder, a mark of official something. He speaks clearly. Not like a noble, but like someone who's been educated to sound like one. He brings news. Your village has been chosen. Not for punishment. For recognition, containment, he calls it. Study. Support. You're not sure what any of that means. But he speaks of rebuilding. Of shared knowledge. Of preserving what you did right. He says your town survived better than most. There's a pause after that. A heavy one. Because better than most still means worse than anything else you've ever known. But it's something. Soon, more will arrive. Writers. Cartographers. Herbalists. People with fresh paper and clean hands. They begin asking questions. Taking notes. Measuring streets. Counting graves. Documenting survivor stories, and suddenly, your story matters. You're interviewed 3 times. Once by a pale young scribe who can't make eye contact. Once by an older woman who sketches everything as you speak, your face, your gloves, the way you hold your hands. And once by a man who seems far too cheerful for a plague historian. He says things like, fascinating. And remarkable resilience. While you describe burying entire families, it's jarring. But also oddly healing. You tell your story. Not just the heroic parts. The scared parts. The gross parts. The days you cried over moldy bread and thought maybe dying would just be simpler. You say it all. And someone writes it down. You wonder if they'll clean it up. Make you sound braver than you were. You hope not. Meanwhile, the visitors bring something else, letters, from other towns. Other survivors. News pinned to wooden boards and hung in the square. People write about what their neighbors did. About what failed. About miracles and mistakes. It becomes a kind of patchwork prayer, written in ink and desperation. You start writing back, a simple note first, about how you used boiled thyme to help breathing, and how it worked once. Maybe. Then a longer one, describing the pit. Marker. The ribbons. You send it to a village you've never heard of. They reply. They ask what color ribbons you used. That's when you realize, people want to remember. Not just their own stories, but yours too. You form a circle with others who've recovered. You meet weekly. Not to grieve, though you do. Not to plan, though ideas surface. But simply to hold space. You sit together. Sometimes in silence. Sometimes not. One person brings carved stones. Another brings dried flowers. You share food. No one calls it a ritual, but it is. One night, an elder speaks. She says, "We lived through something we didn't have words for." Then she adds, "Now we make the words." That becomes your motto. You write things. Poems, mostly. Bad ones. But sincere. Someone else paints. Someone else weaves. A girl embroiders names in secret corners of old clothes. A boy carves tiny animals from bone and leaves them on doorsteps without a word. It's not art therapy. You don't know what that is. It's just survival's echo, turning into something more. Meanwhile, the visitors help set up what they call a plague archive. You help organize it. You sort papers, categorize stories, clean ink pots. The room smells like beeswax and paper. It feels safe. One day, someone hands you a list. It's every name recorded from the town before the outbreak. Beside it, a second list. Those still living, you sit down, and you begin matching them, line by line. Crossing through the ones who are gone. Staring at the ones who remain. It's not about numbers. You're long past numbers. It's about names. Your name is there. Not crossed out. You stare at it for a long time. You think, I am on the second list. You copy both lists into your own hand. Slowly. Carefully. With a little space between each name. So the dead have room to rest, and the living have space to grow. One day, a package arrives from another village. It's a bundle of cloth. Dozens of ribbon scraps. All colors. A note reads, "We heard about your tree." You cry. Just a little, then you take them to the marker, and you hang every single one. After that, more arrived. Some are embroidered. Some were dyed with berries. Some just bits of torn tunic. People from places you've never seen write, "For the ones we lost, and so you'll know we lived too, and tie this for my brother." You make a book of the messages. The archive gives you space for it. It becomes a kind of anchor. Something solid in a world still trembling slightly. You start traveling. Carefully. Not far. Just to nearby villages. You share what your town did. What worked. What didn't. You speak plainly. You don't make it pretty. People listen. Sometimes they cry. Sometimes they argue. Sometimes they just nod and look away, but afterward, they usually hand you something, a story. A relic. A ribbon. You collect them. You don't know what you're building. Just that it matters. Back home, children start playing a game they call mask and cart. One plays the plague doctor. One lies down and gets cured with leaves. You're not sure whether to be disturbed or proud. Maybe both. A friend of yours, a baker, starts making bread shaped like little birds. To honor the doctors, she says. And because people eat more when things are cute. She's not wrong. You eat 3. Someone else writes a song. The chorus goes, "We stayed inside / we stayed alive / we mourned in time / and then we thrived." It's not very catchy. But it sticks. You hum it while hanging laundry. Months pass, seasons shift, people talk about before and after now. As if there was a clean line, there wasn't. You remember. You were there for the blur, but you smile anyway, because the very act of remembering is its own form of rebuilding. One morning, you wake up to the sound of laughter. Real laughter, not strained. Not relieved. Just joyful. You step outside. The air smells like honey and new grass. A child runs past with a ribbon trailing behind her like a tail. 2 men are arguing cheerfully over who has the nicer goat. Someone's painting the chapel wall with vines and birds, and for the first time, you realize, you're not just surviving anymore, you're living. That afternoon, you sit beneath marker and listen to the breeze. The new ribbons dance with the old ones, dozens of them now, blue, red, yellowed with age, bright with dye, frayed by wind. They don't just sway, they speak. In their rustle, you hear fragments of every village, every family, every name whispered through thread. A boy approaches shyly, clutching something in his fist. It's a coin, bent, weather-worn, nearly blank. He says, "It's from my uncle. I never met him, but I thought maybe he could have one, too." You tie it with a bit of twine and hang it gently on a branch. The boy doesn't say thank you. He just stands beside you for a while, watching the tree. Others begin to gather, not in mourning. Not even in ceremony. Just together. Someone plays a pipe again. The tune is better this time. Harmonized by a woman humming softly in the grass. A child claps a rhythm. Someone brings bread, it's not a vigil, it's not a festival, it's something in between. Like a town remembering its own pulse, a man you barely know sits beside you and offers a plum. You bite into it. It's sweet. Too sweet. You laugh, surprised. It tastes like it's showing off, you say. He grins and replies, it's allowed. And that's what it feels like, really, the world, showing off again, the breeze, bold and fragrant, the sky, smeared with gold, the laughter, easy and loud, not because everything is healed, not because you've forgotten, but because survival has given you permission to feel it all again. You lie back in the grass and watch the ribbons move, you whisper names under your breath, and for once, the silence doesn't answer with grief, it answers with breath. With birdsong, with life. You wake to church bells, again, they're louder now. Not just in volume, but in meaning. For weeks, maybe months, the bells rang almost constantly. Not for weddings. Not for celebration. They rang for death. Toll after toll after toll, until you stopped counting. Now, the bells ring less. But every time they do, people still flinch. You included, you sit up slowly, letting the familiar ache settle into place. You've grown accustomed to the morning routine, stretch, sniff for mold, eye the sky for rain, and ask the question that never really leaves, is this still happening? The answer is always yes. Even when things feel quieter. Especially then, because now the questions aren't just about survival. They're about why, and the answer, depending on who you ask, is simple: God did it, probably. Some say it was punishment, divine wrath, unleashed. Others say it's a test. Or a reckoning. Or a sign of the end. A monk in the next village overclaimed the stars were out of alignment, and God was correcting the balance. Another claimed it was all because someone broke a Lenten fast. You think about that as you peel a boiled turnip. Punishment. For what, exactly? Existing. Eating. Breathing the wrong way. Then again, it's hard to argue with a sky full of plague and a pit full of corpses. Some priests whip themselves in the square. Flagellants, they're called. Bare backs, bloodied ropes. Moaning chants. We are the worms, they say. We deserve the fire. It's unsettling. They travel in packs, singing in Latin and leaving trails of fear behind them. Some towns welcome them. Others bar their gates. Your town does both, welcomes and fears. A strange balance. You watched them once. Not out of curiosity. More like a dull compulsion. Their rhythm was hypnotic. 1, 2, 3 strikes. Kneel. Cry. Repeat. You didn't feel cleansed watching them, you felt exhausted. You wonder if God does too. A priest you trust, Father Marius, preaches something different. God weeps with us, he says. Not because he sent this, but because we bear it. It's comforting. In a way that doesn't demand you bleed for it, he brings food to the sick. He listens. He doesn't shout from the pulpit anymore. He just sits with people. Prays softly. Lights candles even when no one else is watching. You think, if God lives anywhere, it might be in that gesture. But faith is fraying at the edges. You've seen it. A woman once devout now spits when she passes the church. A boy threw rocks at the bell tower and screamed, where was he? Even the paintings inside the chapel have grown dimmer. Or maybe your eyes have changed. You stare at the image of Saint Sebastian, arrows in his flesh. Eyes to the sky, and you no longer feel uplifted. Just tired. Historians later will argue whether belief helped people endure the plague, or made it worse. You think, probably both. You've seen people survive because they believed. And others die because they refused medicine in favor of prayer. The line between salvation and surrender is thin. You once sat with a woman who insisted God would cure her. He speaks to me in dreams, she said. She died 2 days later, clutching a rosary so tightly it left an imprint on her palm. You buried her yourself. You also sat with a boy who couldn't read a single verse but muttered please like a mantra while you cooled his fevered head. He lived. You think about him often. You've noticed that people are building shrines, not official ones. Not sanctioned by any church, little ones. On doorsteps. In corners. Under trees, a rock with a cross carved into it, a bundle of herbs tied with twine, a circle of salt around a candle stub. One family built an entire altar from scrap wood and chicken bones. They light it every night. It smells like rosemary and burnt fat. It's not doctrine. It's desperation. But it feels holy. You find yourself doing it too, not because you're sure. But because it helps. You place a pebble on your windowsill each morning, each one for someone you remember. You don't ask for anything. You just place it. It becomes your ritual. Soon, others ask about it. You shrug. It's just what I do. Then they start placing pebbles too. Soon, windows across the village sprout tiny stone rows. No one declares it a religion. But you see people pause beside them, bow their heads, whisper names. Maybe belief doesn't have to look like a sermon. Maybe belief can look like a pebble, a thread, a shared silence. One evening, you attend a mass outdoors. Father Marius says the chapel is too heavy. Too full of ghosts. So he gathers everyone in the field. No pews. No altar. Just the open sky and some uneven benches. He reads softly. He leaves room for silence. Birds chirp. Someone sneezes. A baby cries once and is quickly hushed. He doesn't talk about sin. He talks about sorrow. About endurance. About love, not the romantic kind. The stubborn kind, the kind that brings soup, the kind that digs graves, the kind that remembers your name when everyone else has stopped speaking it. Afterward, people stay. No rush. They sit, they share bread, they braid each other's hair. You sit beside a woman who once cursed God every morning. She hums now. You don't recognize the tune. You don't need to. Someone brings wine, fermented badly, but drinkable. Someone else passes a small pipe carved with angels. You don't know if this is communion, but it feels sacred. Later, someone asks, do you think God was watching? You say, maybe. Then you add, maybe we were watching for him, and that's close enough. The person nods. Doesn't push, because in plague time, no one really wants certainty. Certainty is brittle. Faith, real faith, is messier. It's what happens in the middle of a storm, not the calm after it. It's a candle flickering in a pit, not a sunrise after deliverance. You believe, sort of, not always. Some days, you believe in bread, other days, in laughter, occasionally, in something unseen, just beyond the reach of language, and even on the days when belief slips through your fingers, you still place your pebble. That counts. 2. You begin helping Father Marius keep the church clean, not because you're pious, because it needs doing. You sweep dust. You polish the wood. You try not to look too closely at the plaques on the walls, names that no longer sit beside you in the square. The church feels different now, less like a place of answers, more like a place of echoes. And maybe that's enough. Maybe echo is what's left when prayers don't get responses, but echoes still fill space, and sometimes, when no one's watching, you speak aloud in the chapel, not prayers, but fragments of your day. What you ate. What you saw. The name of someone you passed. A memory. You don't ask for anything, you just say, and you listen, not for a voice, not for thunder, just for the quiet afterward. One evening, as the sun sets in molten gold behind the steeple, a stranger arrives. Wears a robe, but not clerical. Carries no cross. But carries a book. He asks for a place to rest. You offer your bench. He speaks little, watches much. Later, you learn he's a scholar. From far away. Studying belief during the plague. Recording how people changed, what they turned to, what they gave up, he writes for hours. One night, he asks, "What do you believe now?" You answer, "I believe in remembering." He writes that down, then you add, "and in doing small things, even when nothing makes sense." He nods. Before he leaves, he places a pebble on your windowsill. It's red, smooth, warm from his hand. You never forget that, and every time you pass it, you remember what he said before walking away. Maybe God is what we do for each other when we're afraid. You're still not sure, but you keep placing pebbles, you keep lighting candles, you keep remembering, and in that remembering, something glows. It's not certainty, but it's close enough. It starts with music, not a full band. Just a pipe. Faint. Off-key. You think it's a shepherd at first, or a drunk with a whistle and too much energy. You don't pay much attention. Not until the second pipe joins in. Then a third, then you hear footsteps, not marching. Not walking. Dancing. At first, it's just one or two people. Skipping through the square like they've been invited to a wedding no one else heard about. They clap. They twirl. They stomp in time with some rhythm only they seem to know. You lean out your window and watch. They don't stop. Hours pass. They keep going. By dusk, a crowd gathers, not to join in, but to stare. Someone offers them water. They refuse. Someone else offers bread. They laugh. The music continues, as if it's coming from inside them. By morning, there are 30 of them, and they still haven't stopped. You've heard of this before. St. Vitus's dance, some call it. The dancing plague, others say. A madness. A curse. A sickness that grabs the body and won't let go. Historians will debate this for centuries. Was it ergot poisoning from moldy bread? Was it mass hysteria? Was it trauma finally breaking free from the bones? You don't care what it's called. You care that it looks terrifying. Their feet bleed, their clothes are soaked, they don't blink. When someone collapses, the others keep dancing around them. As if their legs never learned how to stop, and somehow, others join. That's the strange part. People from the crowd step in. Not dragged. Not forced. They choose, a mother with tear-streaked cheeks, a man who hasn't spoken in weeks, a girl who lost her brother last month. They leap into the circle with a strange sort of desperation. Like the dance is the only thing keeping them upright. Like motion is the last language they know. By the third day, your village is split. Some say it's a divine punishment. That the dancers are possessed. Others say it's salvation, that the dance is a holy release, a prayer in motion. Father Marius refuses to comment. He just watches, quiet and pale. You try not to look, but it's hard to avoid. The dancers fill the square now. They twirl through the market. They reel through alleys. They wake babies with their stomping. Some are laughing. Some are sobbing. You see one man dancing and weeping at the same time. You can't tell if he's being devoured or delivered. He sees you, extends a hand, you shake your head, he smiles, sadly, and spins away. That night, no one sleeps, the sound of feet slapping earth is relentless. You dream of stomping. You dream your legs move on their own. You wake with your muscles aching and your pillow damp. You whisper to Gertrude, she doesn't answer. By the 5th day, a girl dies, she collapses mid-turn. Eyes wide. Mouth open. No one moves to help. They just keep dancing. Later, someone lays a cloth over her. The dance ripples around her body like water curling around stone. Another joins, then another. You stop counting. Father Marius finally speaks. He stands on a barrel in the square and shouts. This is not God's will. This is our grief turned outward. His voice cracks. He sounds like a man trying to unring a bell. No one listens. He walks away. You find him later, sitting beside Marker. He looks smaller. I tried, he says, You nod. Do you think it will stop? He asks. You don't answer, because the truth is, part of you understands it, the motion. The loss. The need to do something. You felt it too, that tightness in your chest, that pressure building behind your ribs, like grief with no door. What if the dance is the door? That evening, you tie a red ribbon to mark her, then you walk to the edge of the square, and you watch, not with fear this time, with awe, because the dance is changing, it's becoming something else, synchronized, ritualized. People are clapping in rhythm now. There's call and response. Someone shouts a name and the others echo it. A woman lifts a lantern and others mimic her, raising arms in flame-like gestures. This isn't madness, it's choreography born of shared ache. Someone begins chanting, not Latin. Not anything sacred, just syllables. Nonsense. But powerful, the dancers chant back. Over and over. Feet stomp in time. Dust rises, then silence, sudden and total. All dancers freeze mid-step. You hold your breath, then, collapse, dozens drop at once. Not dead. Just spent. Unconscious. Breathing hard, it ends, just like that, and no one knows why. The next day, the square is quiet, the dirt is marked with footprints, circles, spirals, zigzags like fever maps. A few dancers limp through town, dazed. Some remember everything. Some remember nothing, the man who reached for you. He sits in the chapel now. Staring at his hands, I thought I could leave the sorrow behind, he whispers. I danced as fast as I could. You sit beside him, he cries, you say nothing. Later, the town gathers, to talk, to make sense, but there is no clean explanation. Theories fly, spores, trauma, magic, madness. A baker insists it was the rye, a woman claims she saw the Virgin in the dust, a child says, they were trying to fly. Maybe they're all right, maybe none are. Historians will squabble about this for centuries. You're living it, and you still don't know. You help clean the square, you gather the fallen clothes. You sweep the dust. You light a small fire and burn what's beyond saving. A dancer brings you their shoes. Worn through. Blood on the heels. Burn these too, they say. You nod, but you keep the laces, tie them around marker. The tree seems to understand. That night, you dream of dancing, but not frantically, not feverishly. You move slowly. With purpose. Your arms outstretched. A ribbon in your hand. You're not alone. The whole village is dancing with you. Together. In step, you wake with tears on your cheek. You don't remember what the dream meant, only that it meant something. The next day, the musicians return. Not the invisible kind. Not the ones inside heads, real ones. They play soft songs in the square, fiddles, drums, pipes, slow dances. No one joins at first, then someone sways, someone claps. You see a young couple lift hands and spin gently, no frenzy. Just rhythm. Just grace. This time, no one collapses. You sit on a bench and watch, and you think, maybe dancing isn't the problem, maybe we just forgot how to stop. Someone taps your shoulder, you turn and find it's the girl who lost her brother. The one who danced until she fainted. Her cheeks are flushed, but this time not with fever, just with air, with movement, with something close to hope. Would you like to? She asks. You hesitate, you think of the chaos. The trances. The bodies that dropped like marionettes with cut strings. You think of how easily your legs could betray you, how grief sometimes dresses itself in rhythm just to sneak past your guard, but then you think of that dream. The slow circle, the ribbon in your hand, you stand, she leads you to the edge of the square. The musicians are playing something soft, the kind of tune that doesn't demand attention but gently invites it. A lullaby disguised as a waltz. You move, not with abandon. Not with desperate sweat. Just a step. Then another. Your body feels stiff, but it remembers. The way you swayed with your mother in the kitchen. The little dance you used to do while kneading bread, others join. It's not a frenzy, it's not a possession, it's a memory, an offering. By sunset, the square is full again. But it's different now. There are breaks in the rhythm. Laughter. A pause to drink water. Someone sits when their feet hurt. And no one panics. It is not escape this time. It is presence. Someone lights lanterns. They sway in the breeze like fireflies tethered to the earth. You look up, the stars are watching, you think maybe they always were, and for a moment, just a breath, you feel something ancient and quiet settle in your chest, a kind of peace that doesn't ask you to forget, only to move forward, one gentle step at a time. You see one skitter under a cart, tiny, fast, gray. Just a blur of fur and motion. Someone shrieks. Someone else throws a boot. You do neither. You just stare at the gap between the cobblestones where it disappeared and think, that might be the most powerful animal in Europe right now. The rat didn't cause the plague, probably. Historians still argue whether it was rats or fleas or infected fabrics or bad air or punishment or some cosmic roulette will spun by fate with very sticky fingers. But the rats became the symbol. The scapegoat. The enemy with the twitching nose and the too smart eyes. You grew up thinking they were clever pests. Now they carry death in their wake, or at least everyone believes they do. And belief is almost as dangerous as disease. Children throw stones at them, priests declare them devils' familiars, folk healers burn rat-shaped effigies on feast days. In one village, you heard they hung a rat in a tiny noose and buried it like a traitor. You don't know whether to laugh or cry at that. You spot another one later. Bigger this time. Bold. It trots along a wall like it owns the place. It might. Rats have inherited the towns while people hide in homes or graves. They don't seem afraid. And why should they? They've survived the same plague. They feast on what we leave behind. They thrive in the cracks we've made. A boy catches one in a cage and shows it off in the market. Look. The plague demon. His mother slaps the back of his head and makes him release it. You hear whispers that eating rat meat might ward off the sickness. You also hear that touching a rat guarantees death. People are desperate enough to believe both. You've seen some keep rats as pets. Quietly. Secretly. One old woman in your village feeds scraps to a pair she calls Crispin and Joan. They're polite, she says. Better conversation than most of the neighbors, too. You can't argue with that, you don't hate them. You're wary, sure. But they're just trying to live. Like you. Like everyone else, you start noticing them more, in the rafters of the granary, in the alley behind the baker's shop. One perches on a barrel and stares at you with beady calm. Its whiskers twitch. It blinks slowly. You raise an eyebrow. You win, you mutter. It doesn't flinch. Just slips away like a ghost in fur. Historians later will point fingers at the Xenicilla Chiopes flea, carrier of Yersinia pestis, the true microbial villain in this whole saga. But in your world, you don't have microscopes. You don't have germ theory. You have rats. Real. Visible. Creepy in a way that makes your spine tighten even when they aren't doing anything wrong. It's not fair, but neither is plague. You hear of rat catchers making good coin now. Men with pouches of grain, sly hands, sharp sticks. Some towns pay them per tail. Others award prizes for the largest haul. A few even host competitions, public events where piles of rats are dumped into pits and men in leather gloves do battle. You attend one once, you regret it, the squealing never leaves your ears. The smell follows you home, but people cheer. Because every squeal is revenge. Or at least the illusion of it. Of course, none of this helps, because it was never just about the rats, it was about fear you could grab with your hands. Something you could fight, burn, trap, or poison. A physical target for something otherwise invisible. There's talk of importing cats. An entire monastery sends for a fleet of mousers. You hear one nobleman try training ferrets. Another woman claims she's taught her dog to bark every time he hears scratching. She says it saved her family. You think the real miracle is how fast people create logic from chaos. In the market, rat charms are sold, small carved bones, rat teeth hung on cords, dried paws with tiny bells. Meant to ward off the bad ones, or maybe summon better luck. A merchant tells you, hang this above your door and no pestilence will enter. You ask how he knows. He shrugs. Worked for me. You don't buy it, but you see plenty of others do. Some people take it further. They begin burning homes with rat nests. Tearing up floorboards. Fumigating stables with strong herbs. Lavender. Mint. Rue. You help with one effort, stuffing wads of rosemary into crevices. It smells lovely. It might even help. But the rats return, always. You find yourself dreaming about them, a swarm of eyes. A crown of tails. A rat the size of a horse, seated on a throne of discarded shoes and bones. It speaks in riddles. You wake with your sheets twisted and the taste of ash in your mouth. You start keeping a broom beside your bed, just in case. One night, you hear scratching in the ceiling. You hold your breath. It continues. Then fades. You exhale. The next morning, you find a tiny gnawed hole near the pantry. You fix it, but the feeling lingers. People joke now. If you see a rat, kiss your feet goodbye. It's said with a grin but also with eyes that flick sideways to check for shadows. Some make it into songs, children's chants with dark little endings. 3 blind rats. 3 blind rats ran through the hay and caught the black. One got sick and one got thin. One danced into the devil's den, and none came back. You try not to hum it, but sometimes it slips out. Still, there are stories, odd ones. Of rats warning people. One tale tells of a rat that bit a child, waking her from sleep just before her house collapsed. Another says a man followed a rat down a well and found clean water when the rest of the town was dry. A merchant insists his rat dragged him out of a burning barn. People scoff, but not as loudly as they used to. Maybe the rats aren't evil. Just complicated. Like everything else these days, by spring, they're everywhere, more daring. More visible. The world has emptied, and they've filled the vacuum. They run through abandoned inns. They raise litters under altars. They nest in the folds of forgotten gowns. You catch one staring at marker. It stands on its hind legs, watching the ribbons flutter. It doesn't move for a long time. You think, maybe it's grieving too. You nod once. It blinks, then disappears. You tell no one. But that night, you place a single scrap of cheese under marker, not as a trap, as an offering, just in case. The next morning, the cheese is gone, not nibbled. Not scattered. Just gone, neatly. As if someone politely accepted the gift and bowed on their way out. You don't say anything. You just place another piece the next night. It becomes a quiet routine. One you never announce, never explain. You don't really believe it's magic. Or peacemaking. Or that rats care about symbolism. But you do it anyway. Because some gestures don't need explanations. A few others begin leaving offerings, too. Crumbs, nuts, a sardine once. One child leaves a tiny drawing of a rat holding hands with a person. The rat has a flower in its ear. You nearly cry when you see it. It's absurd. And beautiful. You wonder if this is healing, or just a very soft breakdown. Either way, it feels better than throwing stones. One evening, as you're passing by the old weaver's hut, you hear soft squeaking from inside. You peek through the warped wooden frame. There's a cluster of them, 6 rats curled in a pile of lint and wool. One lifts its head to sniff the air. Its eyes reflect the candlelight. You whisper, "Good night," and back away. They don't follow. You think of the folk stories now making the rounds. In one, a rat leads children out of a sickened village to safety in the forest. In another, a rat pulls a thorn from a bear's paw, and the bear gifts it a crown made of moss. You hear these tales by firelight, in kitchens and courtyards, always with one eyebrow raised, but the listeners lean in. No one scoffs anymore. It seems people need new myths, not grand ones, small ones, ones that make room for fleas and teeth and fur and strange little miracles. You meet a scholar passing through who's collecting rat stories. He fills pages with them, meticulously cataloging rat saints, rat devils, rat heroes, rat familiars. He asks if you've seen anything unusual. You shrug. Later that night, you write him a note. A rat once watched the prayer tree longer than most people. He copies it word for word into his book and thanks you with half an apple and a grin. That same night, you find a walnut shell placed on your windowsill. Hollowed, clean, neatly split. It wasn't there earlier. And you didn't put it there. You pick it up. Tucked inside is a single red berry. You look around. No one in sight. You don't smile right away. You just hold it for a long time. The berry isn't edible. But you place it beside your candle anyway. Maybe it's nonsense. Maybe it's a coincidence. Or maybe it's something else. Something smaller than a myth. Bigger than a joke. A moment between species that don't understand each other, but choose not to hate. Your friend Marta makes little sculptures now. Out of clay and bone and twine. One day she gives you a figurine, tiny, careful, shaped like a rat curled into sleep. You keep it on your shelf. You never tell anyone how often you talk to it. The townspeople still trap rats, still complain, still stomp their feet when one appears in the grain stores. But the rage is softer now. Muted. Tired. Like even the anger has grown weary of itself. You walk through the market and see a rat painted on a tapestry, dancing, holding a flower, wearing a crown. No one bats an eye. Rats are still blamed, but sometimes now, they're also forgiven. Sometimes they're even invited in, and maybe that's the strangest part of all, that after all the fear, the scratching, the gnawed edges and fever and shadows under the floor, you've learned to live beside them, to see them, not as monsters, not even as symbols, just as survivors, like you. You see one long before you know what he is. He moves like a shadow stitched together by accident. Black cloak. Wide-brimmed hat. A beak that doesn't belong on any living face. Children scream and hide. Adults turn away, or worse, run. But you stay still. Not because you're brave. Because your legs forget how to move. The beak turns toward you, empty glass eyes stare. He nods, and then walks on. You don't sleep that night. You dream of ravens reading prayers and feathers falling like ash. The next morning, you ask around. Plague doctor, someone says, like it's self-explanatory. You blink. What does he do? Helps, they reply. Then after a pause, in theory. They arrive in towns like omens. No one invites them, but everyone hopes they'll show up. Or dreads it. The line between hope and dread is so thin these days you can see daylight through it. They wear those masks for protection, supposedly. The long beak is stuffed with herbs, lavender, mint, camphor, cloves, anything pungent enough to overpower the stench of rot. Anything that might purify the air. Miasma, the doctors call it. Bad air. That's what they think spreads the plague. Not fleas. Not rats. Just air, thick and foul and diseased. Historians will later say that's mostly wrong. But for now, it's what they have. You watch as the doctor walks past again, the scent of vinegar and crushed rosemary trailing behind like a ghost. He carries a cane, not for walking, for prodding. He taps doors with it, lifts blankets, pokes at bodies without touching them. It makes sense. But it also feels inhuman. You've seen more tenderness from crows. Still, he's not cruel. Just Removed, detached, you wonder if the mask helps with that, if hiding your face lets you survive not just the plague, but the grief. Someone tells you he writes things down. Carries a book. Observes symptoms. Records deaths. Prescribed strange remedies, bloodletting, onions, crushed emeralds in wine. One man was told to sleep with frogs under his pillow. Another to drink broth made from boiled eel skin. No one knows if it works, but they try anyway. You meet him properly a week later. Your neighbor is coughing. Black spots on her neck. No priest will come. So they summon him. You open the door. He glides in, doesn't speak. Just kneels. Examines. Scribbles something with a long feather quill. He smells like damp leather and time. When he finally stands, he hands you a note, not to her, to you. Keep her warm. Burn her linens. Do not weep where she sleeps. You nod, too stunned to ask why. He leaves without another word. She survives. You never throw out that note. Later, you learn his name, not from him, from a drunk who says, "That bird fellow? That's Dr. Emile or Emile something. From France, I think. Or maybe from Florence. Nobody knows." You see him twice more, once tending to a child with a ruptured boil. Once pulling a cart of corpses. The second time, he's whistling, a thin, mournful tune that sounds like it was borrowed from the inside of a hollow tree. You start to wonder if they're human at all. There's more than one of them, apparently. You meet a different one months later, taller. Heavier, with gloves that squeak when he moves. His mask is painted white. Decorative. He wears polished boots. He gives speeches. "I am here to cleanse, to restore order, to document suffering so that it may be understood." People cheer. Then he pokes someone with a stick and walks away. You don't trust that one, but you realize something. People listen to them, more than to priests. More than to lords. More than to each other. Why? Because they look like they know something. The outfit sells it. The mask says, "I have knowledge you don't. I've seen worse and lived. I can fix this, if not your body, then your fear." Even when they fail, they look like they meant to. That's branding, that's power. Some children start mimicking them. Little masks carved from bark. Cloaks stitched from potato sacks. They march in lines, prodding each other with sticks. Adults laugh nervously. One girl calls herself Dr. Sparrow. She asks if you're feeling well. You say yes. She nods solemnly. Good. Keep your elbows clean. You nearly cry. A merchant begins selling miniature masks, trinkets to hang over doors, to protect from sickness. The logic makes no sense. The impulse is ancient. If the symbol is strong enough, maybe it'll keep the darkness out. Even if it wears a bird's face, one day, a body appears in the road. No one will touch it. It's bloated. Smells like iron and vinegar. Someone says, "Wait for the plague doctor." So you do. Hours pass. Eventually, he arrives. He examines the corpse, writes something down, sprinkles a powder over the face, and walks away. He doesn't move the body. Just acknowledges it, and somehow, that's enough. Someone else gathers it. You realize, people just want permission to act. They want a figure to say, "Yes, this is real," and "No, you're not imagining this," and "Go ahead, do something." The plague doctor gives that. Not always in words. But in presence. The mask says, "This is serious." The gloves say, "Keep your distance." The silence says, "There is no guarantee." You start to feel different when you see them, not comforted, but grounded. Like the world still follows rules. Even if those rules are cruel, you wonder what they do when they're alone. Do they remove the mask? Do they have nightmares? Do they laugh? Do they eat? Once, you see one washing his hands in the river. He lifts his mask slightly, just enough to sip water. His face is pale. His eyes have bags under them. He looks like any man. But when the mask goes back on, he becomes something else, larger. Stranger. Necessary. Some people hate them, call them vultures, say they get paid more when people die. That might be true. You've seen one count coins beside a dying man. Then again, you've seen priests do worse, people say they profit from death. But maybe that's just the job, they weren't trained for this, most of them are not actual doctors, you hear. Some are barbers. Some are scholars. A few are just men with steady hands and iron stomachs. But they wear robes. They carry the name, and sometimes, that's enough, you dream of them one night, they stand in a field of bones, they offer you a mask, you ask, will this protect me? They don't answer, you wake up with your mouth dry and your chest aching, you don't know what the dream meant, but you start keeping a sprig of lavender in your pocket, just in case. One day, one of them collapses, in the middle of the square, no one helps him at first, then someone steps forward, slowly, removes the mask. He's young, so young, barely 20, pale. Soaked in sweat, you help carry him to the edge of town, you leave him water, he doesn't speak, just nods, the next day, he's gone, mask too, no note, just a clean handprint left on the wall where he sat. You touch it gently, you think, he was never a monster. Just a boy in a costume, trying to hold back the tide, you start to see the plague doctors differently after that, not as symbols, as people who put on strange armor, not because it works, but because it gives others the illusion that someone is still trying, that someone hasn't given up, even if they have. You don't forget their silhouette, you never will, you still flinch when you see a wide-brimmed hat. But you also straighten your shoulders, because someone has to stand still while the rest of the world collapses, and if it's not them, maybe it can be you, at least for a minute, just long enough to hand over a cup of water, or take a note, or look someone in the eyes and nod, yes, it's terrible, yes, we're still here, yes, this counts as surviving. The last body cart rolled through this morning, not because the plague is gone, but because there aren't enough people left to push it. You watch it wobble along the cobblestones, its wheels sighing like it's tired too. There's no bell this time. No cries of bring out your dead. Just the creak of wood, the soft drag of cloth over limbs. You know that's not the end, it never is, but the air feels thinner now. Less heavy with death, more filled with absence. You step outside and notice things you haven't seen in months, the breeze, a child's laugh in the distance, the way the sun paints lines on stone. You're not sure whether to be grateful or guilty. The church reopens, sort of. Father Marius leads the first gathering, not a sermon. A silence, people sit on the benches and say nothing. Not even prayers. Just breathing. One widow weeps quietly. A young man hums an old song under his breath. A dog wanders down the aisle and no one shoos it away. You think, this might be what healing looks like, not triumph, not a miracle, just people sitting together and not dying. Still, the fear lingers, you feel it in how people flinch when someone sneezes. In how shopkeepers wrap goods in cloth now, not just to keep them clean, but to avoid touching. In how no one hugs anymore, and yet, slowly, things begin, the baker opens his shutters. The bread is flat and a little burnt. But it sells out. A teacher starts gathering children in the field, telling stories with sticks in the dirt. You see 3 teenagers repairing the fence around the well. One falls in, not deep, just enough to soak his boots. They laugh harder than anyone has in weeks. Laughter doesn't mean it's over, but it helps. You join others in scrubbing the chapel floors. The water is cold, your back aches, and the soap smells like spoiled citrus, but you scrub anyway. When it's done, someone brings rosemary to lay across the altar. No one says a word about it, but the scent lifts something heavy from your chest. A merchant hangs a lantern on his doorpost. The next day, 5 more do the same. You ask why, he shrugs. To make it feel like a town again. You leave a candle on your windowsill, people pass by and nod. No words. Just the flicker of recognition. You think about the ones who didn't make it. Their names feel like teeth in your mouth, sharp and sore. You don't say them out loud, not yet. But you think about them, sometimes, in order. A mental litany. You promise yourself, I will remember them without letting them devour me. The graveyards are full, the hill behind the priory is now just rows and rows of uneven mounds, someone plants flowers. Wild things. Not orderly. No names, no stones. Just color. A woman walks the rows barefoot every morning. She leaves feathers. When asked why, she says, to help them fly. No one questions her, marker is covered in ribbons now. Not just yours, red, blue, cloth, string, leather strips, wool yarn. Stories tied into knots. Names inked onto scraps. Wishes whispered into bark. Someone weaves 3 ribbons into a braid and pins a note. He danced until the last minute. He said he wanted to be remembered in motion. You add another. She taught me how to boil eggs without cracking them. I never got to thank her. Marker is full of memories now. A kind of archive. One you can touch. The plague hasn't vanished, new cases still pop up. But they're fewer. Slower. Like embers, not wildfires. Someone says, maybe it burned itself out. Someone else replies, maybe it just moved on. You don't ask where, you meet a traveler passing through. She's cautious, but curious. What was it like? She asks, you laugh once. Which part? She stays for 2 nights. Leave you dried fruit and a scarf. Says, tell someone my name when I'm gone. Just in case I disappear too. You do, later, you teach a child how to sew. She pricks her finger 3 times and blames the thread for being cursed. You tell her stories as you thread the needle, about stubborn needles, magic cloth, and grandmothers who sewed curses right into royal curtains. She grinds. You think, this is how history survives. Not in scrolls, in hands, in laughter, in a slightly crooked stitch that someone will one day wonder about. The rats are still around, but now they're part of the scenery. One lives under the stairs of the apothecary and everyone just lets it be. The apothecary leaves scraps for it. Says it hasn't stolen anything important. Except my heart, he jokes, and no one rolls their eyes. You find yourself talking to them, sometimes, not expecting answers. Just filling space. Some days you speak to the dead too, not out loud, just under your breath. Look, you say. I fixed the shutters today. Look, you say. The plum tree is blooming. You don't know if they hear, but it feels better to pretend they might. You plant something, not for food, for beauty. You're not sure what it is. It was just a bulb you found in a dusty drawer. But you dig a small hole. Press it in. Cover it with care. When the first sprout emerges, you nearly weep. You want to name it. You don't, not yet. The nights are quieter, not because the sickness is gone, but because the screaming has stopped. Silence feels like a gift now. You sit on your stoop and watch the moon. She's round tonight. Golden. Soft-edged. You remember when you were too scared to look up. Now you do, often. The stars blink back like they're checking to see if you're still there. You are. A painter begins sketching again. He says he lost the thread during the worst of it. Now he draws what he remembers. Faces, streets, the edge of a hand offering bread. He paints the plague doctor once, but gives him bright blue eyes under the mask. Someone says that's not historically accurate. He replies, history doesn't get to win all the time. You like that. The weaver opens her stall again. You buy a scrap of cloth with a tiny embroidered rat chasing a sun. You hang it over your heart. No one comments, but you catch one old woman smiling as she passes. You think, we're learning how to live again. It doesn't feel triumphant. It feels like rising from a chair after sitting too long. Your legs are unsteady. Your balance is unsure. But you stand anyway. You gather with others on the solstice, not a feast. Just a meeting, someone brings bread. Someone else sings a song, you light a fire, you tell stories, and when someone asks, "What do we call this year?" There's a long pause, then someone answers, "The year we bent but didn't break." Everyone nods, no one claps, but the silence after feels full, not empty. You find a note pinned to marker a few days later. It's short, "I am still here." You smile, because you are too. You sit beside marker that evening, the ribbons rustling softly in the breeze like breath made visible. Someone has added bells, small, tarnished, uneven. When the wind stirs, they make a sound like distant laughter or forgotten lullabies. You lean against the bark and feel its warmth, faint but real. You think, this tree has watched everything. It's held every secret. And yet it hasn't said a word. Not even once. You reach into your pocket and pull out the old note, the one the plague doctor gave you. The ink has faded, the corner is torn, and there's a grease smudge where you touched it once with fingers still wet from broth. You unfold it carefully. Read it again, for maybe the 100th time. Keep her warm. Burn her linens. Do not weep where she sleeps. You still don't know what that last line means. Maybe it was science. Maybe superstition. Maybe a kindness dressed as instruction. You whisper the words aloud and let them drift into the roots. A child walks by, holding a rat by the scruff. Not to hurt it, just to relocate it. He sees you and grins. "Name's Clementine," he says proudly. "She only steals some bread." You raise your eyebrows. Generous of her. He nods with great seriousness. "She doesn't like rye." You don't ask how he knows. Children have their own ways of truth. Later, as dusk settles and swallows curl in the sky like ink being stirred, a familiar shape appears down the road. The hat. The cloak. The long, bird-like face, but it's not the same. The walk is slower. Less grim. He stops at each doorstep, not to mark, not to warn. Just to pause. To check in. To witness. You stand as he approaches. He nods at you again. But this time, you speak, you stayed. He doesn't answer, but he opens his book, tears out a page, folds it once, and hands it to you. Then he continues on. You don't open it right away. You wait until the stars arrive and the village goes quiet. Then, sitting by candlelight, you unfold the page. It's blank, at first, but when you tilt it, faint marks appear, like they were written in lemon juice or sadness. You hold it closer to the flame and the words bloom slowly, awkwardly. "You are the cure now, keep going." You close your eyes and press the paper to your chest. No one else needs to see it, but you know you will never forget, because survival isn't just a heartbeat, it's a habit, a choice made again and again, to wake, to wash, to laugh, to plant, to write things down, to feed rats, to talk to trees, to remember names, to leave the window cracked just a little, so the wind can carry the stories forward. You start noticing the coughs again. At first, it's just one or two, a dry hack in the bread queue, a sneeze behind a shutter. You tell yourself it's dust. It's spring pollen. It's nothing. But the coughs don't stop. They multiply. Mingle with whispers. Then with fear. You've been here before. This time, it's worse in a quieter way. No sudden collapse. No screaming. Just a slow unraveling of what little piece had been stitched back together. You overhear two elders arguing in hushed voices behind the chapel. It's the same plague. No, no. This one's different. Starts with a chill this time. Or maybe it never left. Historians will later call it the second wave. You just call it again. You feel it settle into your bones like a cold you'd forgotten to brace for. The kind that waits until you're laughing, then pulls the smile straight off your face. The town doesn't panic right away. This isn't new anymore. It's more like fatigue than terror. Everyone knows what to do, or at least what didn't work the last time. Quarantine happens faster, shops limit hours. The chapel closes its doors again, but leaves candles burning in the windows. You find yourself falling into familiar rhythms, laying out vinegar rags, sleeping in shifts, counting spoons like they might vanish. But something's changed this time. You're not just reacting. You're anticipating. You help draw chalk circles around known cases. Leave baskets of food and notes at doors, thinking of you. Hot broth inside. We're still here. People cry when they read the notes. Not from fear. From the relief of being seen. You take care of an old man on the edge of town. He doesn't speak, just hums a single tune over and over again. You wash his hands. He pats yours. You leave feeling better, even if he never said a word. The new strain, if it is a new strain, is subtle, it tricks people. One day someone's walking to market. 2 days later, their room is empty. No screams. No sores. Just vacancy. As though the plague learned how to be quiet, people start leaving chalk marks on their doors again. Not because anyone told them to, just instinct. A red X means someone's sick. A black one means someone's gone. A green circle means they're still okay. For now, your street looks like a game board. You carry your broom from house to house like a scepter of comfort. You sweep more than usual. Not out of necessity, but because the rhythm keeps your mind from wandering into dread. Someone paints small hearts on the shutters of the sick. It's not official, it's not even useful. But somehow it makes people cry harder than the deaths themselves. You think, maybe that's the difference this time. No one is pretending anymore. The first round, people clung to myths. To saints. To garlic and charms and prayers. Now, they cling to each other. More honestly. Less loudly. The plague doctor returns, same mask. Same cloak. Same gliding walk. But this time, people greet him like an old colleague. Some even wave, he nods. No words. Just that same presence. He stops at marker, ties a single white ribbon, then keeps walking. You sit under the tree that night and see a girl leave half a pear and a scrap of song lyrics. You don't know the tune, but it rhymes. It'll probably survive her. You think, that might be the most powerful thing we do now, leave pieces behind. The young recover faster this time, mostly. You help a boy named Theo, whose only symptom is a strange fever dream about floating above the town and watching everyone cook soup wrong. He draws it for you. The soup. The floating. You pin it above your hearth. Your neighbor Marta, the one who makes clay rats, starts sculpting hands now. Dozens of them. Some open. Some clasped. Some curled into little fists like they're about to knock. She lines them along her windowsill. People stop to touch them. She tells you, if they take my voice, at least I've left a hand to wave. You start making things too. Just tiny ones. Beaded strings. Bits of lace. You tie them to doors. Windows. Fence posts, not to protect, just to say, someone made this while still alive. One day, a boy comes running down the lane yelling, he survived. He survived. He means his grandfather. The whole street gathers. No one cheers. It's quieter than that. More reverent. Someone offers bread. Someone else starts a tune. You find your feet moving, not dancing. Just rocking, because music is still allowed, even when everything isn't. The fever seems to lessen after a few weeks. Or maybe your mind adapts. It's hard to tell. The important part is, the chalk marks stop appearing. First 1 day. Then 3. Then a week, the silence that follows is unbearable, not relief. Waiting. You keep breathing, keep walking, you help bury someone's cat. You help mend a gate. You help a stranger braid their hair because her fingers won't stop shaking. One night you walk past the chapel and see a candle has gone out. You relight it, with no ceremony, just because someone had to. It rains for 3 days straight, the kind of rain that soaks your knees and makes the gutters moan. You think the sky is finally morning. Letting go of what it held too long, you go out in it. Everyone does, drenched. Shivering. Laughing, someone spins in a puddle, someone else slips and swears, and then laughs anyway. The bells ring, not for mourning, not for warning, just because. You find the plague doctor standing in the downpour, arms folded under his cloak. Watching, you step beside him. Are you staying long? You ask. He tilts his mask slightly. No longer than needed, he finally says. His voice is low, edged in gravel. Like it doesn't belong to just one man, but to all the dead. You nod. That seems fair. Before you go, you hand him a ribbon. He doesn't tie it to anything. He pockets it. You hope that means something. When the rain stops, everything smells like thyme and iron. People scrub their thresholds, not because anyone is sick, but because they want the dust of fear gone. You help open the market again. This time, it's smaller. But brighter. Flowers. Little pies. Trinkets with no purpose other than because I wanted to. You buy a pin shaped like a door. The vendor says, "May yours always open." You cry in public and no one minds. You find time to sit, not because you're exhausted. Just because sitting feels like something you've earned. Someone passes by with a newborn goat tucked under their arm. You laugh harder than you should. The goat bleats once, as if in agreement, and for the first time in weeks, your laughter doesn't turn bitter at the end, it just continues. The next morning, someone leaves honey at your door, not a jar, just a small saucer, barely a spoonful. You don't know who left it. There's no note. Just the honey, golden and trembling in the light, like a piece of sunlight that got lost on its way to heaven. You place it on the windowsill and don't touch it. Not because you're superstitious, because it feels like an offering meant for something that watches over without asking for thanks. Later, a bee finds it. Just one. Fat, fuzzy, indecisive. It drinks. Circles once. Leaves, you whisper. Come back soon, and mean it. You meet new people these days. People who didn't live here before the second wave. Travelers, widows, people returning from monasteries or hiding places in the forest. Everyone has their own story of not dying. Not all of them are pretty. One man tells you he survived because he locked himself in a wine cellar for 30 days with nothing but pears and psalms. You ask what saved him, the pears or the prayers. He says, both were hard to chew. A woman shows you a necklace made of buttons. One for each person who gave me bread, she says. There are 9, you give her your ribbon, she adds it to the chain. You notice something strange, too. No one asks when the plague will be over. They've stopped treating it like a storm. Like something that arrives, destroys, and vanishes. Now it's something else, a scar that aches when the wind changes, a silence you sometimes wake up listening for. You realize you've stopped counting the days since it all began. You've started counting the ones where something, anything, made you smile. Yesterday, it was a child's chalk drawing of a rat on stilts. Today, it's that bee. Tomorrow, you don't know, but you're still here, and for now, that's enough. The Guildhall smells like wood smoke, melted wax, and something vaguely nutty, maybe chestnut flower, maybe dust. You're not even sure why you're here. No one invited you. But the doors were open. And people are talking again. Not panicking, not whispering, just talking. That's new. Around the room, they sit in rough circles. Traders. Midwives. A monk who now makes soap. A widow who took over her brother's tannery. A boy with ink-stained fingers who calls himself a scribe, even if no one remembers training him. They're trying to decide something. You lean against a beam and listen. Do we rebuild the fairgrounds? Someone asks, there's no fair, another replies, yet. The word sits in the air like a dare. You want to laugh. Not because it's funny. Because it's absurd. Because 2 seasons ago, they were dragging corpses out with long poles, and now someone wants to put up bunting and roast geese, but still, you say nothing, because absurdity doesn't mean it's wrong. One woman, Dina, stands and smooths her apron. I say we do it. Let people come. Let them trade. Let them eat bad pie and drink worse wine. We don't need perfection. We need presence. The monk nods solemnly. Let it be ugly. Let it be real. That, apparently, seals it. The spring fair is on. Preparations begin almost immediately. You find yourself helping tie ribbons to fence posts and repaint signs that haven't been touched in years. The colors run a little, and someone accidentally uses lamp oil instead of varnish, but no one minds. It doesn't need to be beautiful, it needs to be happening. As the days pass, you hear new sounds, hammering, singing, laughter that doesn't end in a cough. Kids race through the alleys again, pretending to be plague doctors and goats and ghosts, depending on the mood. There's still loss in the air, sure. Still shadows under eyes and salt in every conversation. But no one is pretending anymore. And that honesty feels like freedom. On the morning of the fair, the whole town smells like warm sugar and roasted meat. You help set up the memory wall, a new thing someone suggests, and everyone instantly agrees on. It's just a stretch of linen, nailed to the churchyard gate, with charcoal sticks and ribbon nearby. People write names. Draw little symbols. One child traces her hand and writes, "For Papa, who held mine." You try to write something, you don't. Instead, you press your fingers to the cloth, as if your silence can fill the shape of someone who's gone. The fair begins with no fanfare, just music, drifting from a pair of fiddlers who haven't played together in over a year. They're rusty. Off-key. Glorious. People start dancing before the stalls even open. A man sells wooden rats with tiny cloaks and brass monocles. He says they're lucky vermin. You buy 2. One for you. One for the tree. A baker hands out burnt pastries with pride. They're edible. She announces. And she's right. Barely. Kids chase each other with feathers dipped in ash. Someone starts a puppet show featuring a plague doctor who saves a village by sneezing into a volcano. The logic is baffling. The crowd roars. You sit at a long table later, surrounded by faces you didn't know last season. They pass you bread, pickled carrots, and a poem written on a napkin. You read it aloud. It's bad. It rhymes rat with flatulence. Everyone applauds anyway, because that's the rule now. If it exists, it deserves applause. You see marker lit up with lanterns. Someone tied the ribbons into a long tail, trailing from the highest branch. It catches the breeze and moves like something breathing. You add your wooden rat to the roots. You call her Professor Squeaks. No one judges you. That evening, a storm threatens. Thick clouds roll over the horizon like bruises in motion. For a moment, everyone freezes, like the wind has whispered, "Do you remember how bad it can be?" But then someone shouts, "Dance faster." And they do. You join them. Your feet ache. Your ribs hurt from laughing. But you keep spinning, because no one knows if this will last, because this might be all the proof of life you get, because joy, now, is resistance. At midnight, a drunk girl pulls you into a side alley and says she's writing a play about the plague. It's tragic, she says, but funny. And there's a ghost pig. You nod, she beams. You get it. You do more than you'd like to admit. The storm never comes, it passes over, grumbling but harmless. The next morning, you wake with hay in your hair and a bruise you don't remember earning. The air smells clean. Washed. Like something has been reset, you find that someone's tucked a note under your door, a simple scrap of parchment, folded twice. Inside, it reads, "This was never about winning. Just staying." You press it flat and hang it above your hearth. The town goes quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet as before. This quiet is full, restful, confident. You walk to the well and find a basket already there, filled with apples, 3 candles, and a string of polished buttons. A gift. No label, no need. You take 1 apple and leave a shell you found at the river. Small. Iridescent. Empty. Trade feels sacred now, like a promise. I have something. I want you to have it too. That evening, a child with curly hair and wild stories tells you she wants to be a hope keeper when she grows up. You ask what that is. She frowns. It's like a baker but for feelings. You smile. Then you're already halfway there. She offers you a pine cone. For your shelf of things that matter. You accept it with both hands. The pine cone is oddly warm, you don't question it. You start writing things down, not big things. Little ones. Today I didn't flinch when the bell rang. Someone smiled at me with their whole face. I made soup without crying. You call it your proof of life book. You write in it every day. 1 entry reads, "I danced at a fair while the sky threatened rain. The storm blinked first." Another, "Someone I love might still be alive somewhere, breathing." You don't write names, just moments, because moments are what got you through, what get you through, that, and the promise that this messy, broken, ribbon-wrapped, rat-haunted world, is still spinning. Still singing, still worth staying in. You're not sure when people started building again, not just fixing or patching, but building. New stalls. New walls. New rooms that never existed before the plague came and rearranged the very idea of permanence. The blacksmith is putting up a second forge. Why? You ask, because it's a habit now, questioning hope when it shows its face. He shrugs. Someone will need it. You nod, because he's right, someone will. The world didn't end. But it cracked in ways you're still mapping. And now people are laying stone across the seams. Not to hide them. To honor them, you visit the outskirts of town and see a cottage going up where the old tannery burned down. There's no plaque. No sign. Just laughter and hammering, 2 dogs chasing each other through sawdust, and a little girl drawing the scene in charcoal on the wall. In progress. It's a house for stories, she explains. You ask what that means. She says, "You'll see." And you do. Inside, people leave books, drawings, letters to the dead, carved buttons, notes that simply say "I'm still here." It becomes a kind of shrine. But not to sorrow, to survival. You leave a ribbon from your first marker visit. It's frayed and sun-faded, but you know what it meant. You tuck it beneath a stack of sketched faces, and feel lighter. One day, a merchant arrives with a donkey cart full of glass jars. Each one contains dirt, labeled by town. River, or hill, what are these for? Someone asks. Returning, he replies. He opens one jar and sprinkles a handful of earth at the foot of the chapel. He bows, then moves on. You follow, not to copy him, but to witness, because witnessing matters. You remember the early days of the plague, when no one knew what to say. When fear spoke louder than names. And now, look, there are rituals. They've grown like moss through grief. Someone knits blankets only in green thread. For growth, they say, a baker carves a sun onto every loaf. Even the silence has a rhythm now. You sit by the river and hear it. Water, wind, the rustle of branches, a child yelling somewhere in the distance about a talking goat. The world is noisy again. But not in a way that presses. In a way that carries. You think of the plague not as a single event, but a long unraveling, and now, finally, a gentle rethreading. Not everything came back. You still miss voices you'll never hear again. A favorite song that vanished with its singer. The way the market smelled before the spice cart disappeared. But other things grew in their place. Like how people now leave water outside their homes for birds. Or how the cobbler hums lullabies while he works and doesn't mind if you sit nearby. One morning, you find a letter on your stoop. No name. No seal. Inside, it reads, "We never got to say goodbye, so instead, let's say, see you where the road curves." You fold it into your pocket and carry it with you all day, like a prayer you don't understand but trust anyway. The girl from the House of Stories stops you one evening and asks if you want to hear what she's written. You say yes before she even finishes the question. She pulls out a crumpled scrap. Clears her throat. In the time of plague, she begins, people became seeds. Some cracked. Some buried themselves. Some split open and grew into strange new things. But all of them reached toward the sun, even when they couldn't see it. You applaud, she bows, you give her a pine cone in return. A gesture that now means more than words. The priest, older now, with more gray in his beard than red, starts holding evening circles again. Not sermons. Circles. Everyone brings something, a stone, a story, a jar of pickles. He opens each with, "What did you survive this week?" Answers range from a bad dream to my brother's funeral to learning how to laugh again. The youngest child always says the same thing, Monday. It becomes a running joke. You start looking forward to Monday just to hear her say it. The plague taught you many things, some too sharp to name. But this, maybe, is one of the gentler lessons. Rebuilding isn't about going back, it's about choosing forward. And so people do. The fair becomes a seasonal thing now, each time, slightly different. This time there's a puppet duel between a frog king and a ghost rat. Last time, it was a pie-eating contest where no one won, because someone spiked the pies with too much cinnamon and everyone just passed out laughing. There are no trophies. Just ribbons and stories, and that's enough. One night, you sit with Marta, the clay sculptor. Her hands are cracked, nails rimmed with blue from some new pigment she's trying. She says, "I thought grief would end." You wait, she continues, but it didn't. It just stepped back. Let other things share the room. You nod, you feel it, too. You've started lighting a candle each night. Not for mourning. For marking. This day happened, you lived it, that counts. You write that in your proof of life book. It feels good to reread it when mornings come slow and heavy. Sometimes you still dream of masks, not frightening ones. Familiar. Protective. Sometimes. In the dreams, you are the plague doctor, walking from house to house, not to record death, but to name what survived. A rocking chair. A song. A sourdough starter named Philip. You wake with the echo of that walk in your feet. You light the candle, you write something down, you move forward, because that's what people do. They bend. They break. They braid ribbons into memory and hang bells on doorposts to keep the silence honest. They throw fairs even when it rains. They teach goats to wear hats. They forgive themselves for not saving everyone, and when the plague comes back again, because it might, they'll know, this time, we already have the tools, and the stories, and the hands, and the courage to carry both joy and grief in the same mouthful of air. You walk the edge of the field the next morning, boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. Dew clings to everything, grass, weeds, your sleeves, and there's a heaviness in the mist that reminds you, gently, of all the names never spoken again, but it also reminds you of possibility. You see fresh shoots pushing up through soil where firewood once sat stacked in mourning. Tiny green blades curling toward light, toward breath. The kind of growth that doesn't ask for permission. It just happens. Behind you, the bell tower rings once, not to mark death. Not even for a service, just to let the air know someone still lives here, someone lights that fire each morning. someone tends that flame. Maybe you. By midday, the town's main square begins filling again. No particular reason. Just habit. People gathering. Sharing things. News. Gossip. Dried cherries. Music. A boy shows off a cart he's fashioned from old wheelbarrows and bits of plague barrier fencing. He calls it the Death Defier. It doesn't steer well, but it rolls. He lets others ride. One girl falls off laughing and says, "I think I almost saw heaven." You say, "Heaven probably doesn't have splinters." She replies, "Then I'm not interested." You grin. In a corner of the square, someone has begun building a tiny library. Not with scrolls or ink, but with memory, boxes full of pebbles painted with phrases. One says, "I held her hand anyway." Another, "They forgave me first." Another, in messy child scrawl, "I am not afraid anymore, not really." You add one, "I stayed." That evening, the sky is cloudless. You walk past marker again. Someone has left fresh lavender. A note pinned beside it reads, "Thank you for witnessing me." It doesn't say who it's to. Maybe that's the point. You sit a while, let the breeze find your face, and remember, not everything, just enough. The road is dusty again. Not with the dry stillness of despair, but with footsteps. Wagons. Movement. You stand outside your door and count them, not because you're curious about travelers, but because it's become your ritual. Every morning, a new set of boots, a creaking wheel, a different kind of silence settles and stirs. Some people come looking for a family. Some leave flowers at the gate and say nothing. Others settle in without asking, as if the town has always been waiting for them. No one objects. There's room now. There's space made by absence, but also by choice. You meet a woman who used to be a nun. She says she left the convent because God stopped whispering, and she realized people had started instead. She brews tea from mint and something bitter. You drink it anyway. Someone else arrives carrying a violin wrapped in oilcloth. He doesn't speak. Just plays, in the square, in the chapel, once beneath marker, where the notes seem to thread through the ribbons like stitches. You hum along without realizing it. There's no tune. Just feeling. The weaver makes you a new sash. Not because you need one. Because she dreamt of you wearing it. It was raining, she says. But you smiled like it wasn't. You wear it for 3 days straight. Every time you glance down and see the stitched blue line through green, like a river across a field, you feel steadier. Someone says it's been 2 years since the first cart of bodies. You hadn't marked it. No one does it formally, but the bells ring at dusk, 9 times, then silence, then laughter. Children are playing a game that involves pretending to be ghosts who give out soup. The logic is lost on you, but the joy isn't. You walk to the chapel and light a candle. This time, you write something too. One word, still. And you leave it at the altar. The priest doesn't look at it, just nods, like he's seen enough candles, enough notes, enough grief folded into offerings to know the shape of healing when it passes by. You sit beside the apothecary one morning while he grinds something sharp-smelling into powder. "You know," he says, "I used to think the body was the most delicate part." You tilt your head. He continues, "But it's the mind. The soul. The hope. Those break faster. And take longer to set." You don't answer, because you don't have to. The soup kitchen still runs, though now it's less soup and more, well, everything. Music, advice, gossip, matchmaking, midwife referrals. Someone brings a loaf in the shape of a goat and no one dares slice it. It sits there for 3 days, slowly going stale, guarded like a treasure. Eventually, it vanishes. No crumbs, just gone. Someone pins a note where it was, to the one who ate the goat. "May you be bold forever." You suspect it was the child who once named a rat Clementine. She's taller now. Quieter. But her eyes still sparkle with future mischief. You walk the lanes now with less fear. Not because the danger's gone, but because you know its shape, you know what it looks like when it comes, and what to do when it does. The plague doctor hasn't returned in weeks, some think he left, some say he was never real to begin with. But you know better, sometimes you see a feather tucked into a shutter, or a black ribbon left on a doorstep. His way of saying, I'm watching. But you've got this now. Someone opens a school again. Not just for reading or numbers, but for story. They ask you to come speak, you laugh, say you're no historian, they say, good. We already have one of those. We need someone who remembers. You stand before a dozen children and tell them about how you survived, not the gory parts. Not the numbers. The tiny parts, the burnt bread, the lavender under the bed, the way someone sang to the air when they thought no one was listening. You end with, I don't know why I'm still here. But I am. And that's what I bring to the room. They clap, you cry, one girl offers you a marble as thanks, you carry it in your coat pocket. A small weight. A perfect sphere. Sometimes, when things feel off balance, you hold it, let it remind you, some things endure with smoothness. The woman who used to leave feathers in the graveyard now builds kites, she ties memories to their tails, notes, names, scraps of prayer cloth. When the wind is right, she runs and releases them, you watch them lift, paper bones. String limbs, stitched soles. Once, she hands you one, this one's for those who weren't ready to go. You don't ask what to do with it, you run, you let go, it flies, high, vanishing into cloud like it was born there. In the market, someone starts selling hope jars, tiny glass bottles filled with dust, petals, thread, or nothing at all. The nothing sells best. People need containers for their own meanings. You buy one, keep it near your bed, tell yourself, that emptiness holds everything I'm not ready to say. You visit marker again, and this time, you find no new ribbons, just a stillness that feels complete. You don't add anything. You sit beneath it and read from your proof of life book. The first entry still says, today, I stood. The most recent, I laughed while peeling onions. Not sure why. That feels like progress. Someone carves a bench beneath the tree, you don't know who, but you use it often. You write a letter to no one in particular, seal it with wax, hide it in the rafters of the story house. The girl sees you, doesn't say anything, but later, you find a second letter next to yours, then a third. Now there's a small, secret archive growing. Hidden truths. Last confessions. First dreams, no one reads them. That's not the point. You meet someone new at the market, they have kind eyes and questions you don't mind answering. You walk together once. Then twice, then often, they tell you their worst memory and laugh before finishing it. You realize you haven't done that before, laughter while remembering. You say, I'm still scared. They say, me too. But maybe not of the same things anymore. You plant a new bulb in the garden, same kind you planted before, it doesn't bloom, you shrug, you plant another, that one does. Sometimes that's how it goes. One day, the wind shifts and smells like old perfume, the kind your neighbor used to wear before she vanished. You look around. No one there, but you whisper, I remember. Because maybe that's all the dead want to hear, and maybe that's all the living need to say. The plague is never declared over. No bell, no announcement, just fewer deaths, more songs, more people putting their chairs outside when the sun's out. One child is born, then two, you hold one. They grab your finger with startling strength and blink at you like you're supposed to know what comes next. You whisper, I don't. They blink again, you smile. That night, the stars are visible again, clear and close. You sleep without dreaming, without waking, without fear. You wake to the sound of someone singing, and for the first time in what feels like forever. You hum along before opening your eyes, the wind down, you lie back and let the breath settle, the story's no longer rushing. Just drifting now, soft, steady, like a stream winding through a quiet wood. All the urgency has gone. What remains is the echo of something real. you remember the feet that walked through ashes, the hands that held a ribbon, the whisper of a name spoken only to the wind. None of it was loud. None of it needed to be. You feel your own heartbeat, calm now. A soft rhythm under the covers. Like a lullaby stitched into your ribs, let the night stretch out, let the silence become kind again. Maybe you're still sitting under that old tree. Maybe you're back in your room with the fan on low and your thoughts finally untangling themselves. Either way, you made it. Not because you were stronger. Not because you were luckier. But because you kept going. Step by step. Breath by breath. History rarely gives awards to the ones who endure quietly, but tonight, let it be known, you did, so rest now, no more leeches. No more masks. Just this moment, stillness. Peace. The soft weight of having made it through. Close your eyes, you're safe here, the candle burns low, and the story folds itself gently around you, like a blanket you've had forever, the kind that always smells a little like lavender and dust, and tomorrow, that's someone else's chapter. You've written enough for today. Sleep well, sweet dreams.